All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the December 18th board meeting. I'm going to open this with a call to order. Nathan here.
Dan here.
Jessica here. Melissa here.
All right, and Monica is currently. Oh, Monica's. We can't hear her yet.
Don't get that.
There we go. All right, Monica.
I'm here.
All right.
And Ross.
Oh, and Ross.
Here.
All right. We'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Review the I-35 mission statement. The Interstate 35 Community School District exists to develop lifelong learners and responsible, productive, successful citizens in an ever-changing society. Our district priorities are to articulate and support a cohesive student-centered pre-K through 12 vision for continuous school improvement, engage in effective teaching and relevant learning for the 21st century, and operate with fiscal integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness. All the board members got a chance to review the agenda. You want to discuss or change anything as part of that? All right. We'll entertain a motion to approve this really long agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second it.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. We'll now move on to the open forum part. Residents, students, and parents and guardians and staff members of the district may address the board about relevant topics. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speakers' participation is limited to 5 minutes per meeting. We ask speakers to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees or students or their performance. And with that, we have one speaker tonight, Frank Stroh, who's going to talk to us about LMC facilities and insurance. Welcome, Frank.
Good evening, afternoon. I'm Frank Stroh, and I'm president of our educational professional support staff. I've been in that capacity 11 years. I've worked under 4 superintendents and several board presidents and many board members. I'd like to thank the current board for your commitment to I-35 to foster a different environment. I think this will be very beneficial to our students. I want to thank our current educational support professionals for their dedication, perseverance, and commitment to the students that we serve. I see these people in action every day. Outstanding. I felt compelled to speak tonight after reading the agenda last week. I have 3 topics. The first one is the retirement package for the support staff. I think it's a good practice. This was brought up by our members a couple years ago, and then our last meeting in September, it magically appeared again. We haven't had another LMC committee meeting. One of our members was privy to us. The rest on our staff or committee was not. I do expect professional courtesy for our committee. With that being said, I could talk in private for other topics. My next is facilities. We've been without air conditioning at bus shed for 4 years. We've got it upstairs for storage, but not downstairs. There's no windows. I was told, couldn't you put in a window air conditioning? Well, there's no window. That's a tin shed out there. You know, how long are we going to let it sit? We got a state-of-the-art facility. I've been to other schools, other districts. We are a shining star for our facility out there. I challenge you to look around the big districts and everything. We got a great facility. next topic, oh, the kitchen. I work in the kitchen. Angie's been down a couple employees. I would like to know why we can't get some air conditioning in the kitchen. We've got an art room that's air conditioning, we got a commons that's air conditioning, and we've got ductwork that leads to the superintendent's office, which I did the lights when we remodeled the superintendent's office. It's capped off going into the kitchen. We got 2, maybe 3 systems, and we put our employees at risk for heat exhaustion. I've seen many employees have to take breaks in the cooler or the freezer with a chair because it's so hot. My last topic is the insurance committee. I've been on this committee since its inception 4 years ago. Our committee made great strides to manage costs. We've omitted, we've changed, we've managed plans to have good insurance for our employees. We've even saved costs for the districts against rising insurance costs. However, we as a district are kind of failing 50 or so employees, our support staff. I've been a huge proponent in this committee about equity. Administration doesn't pay anything towards insurance. Teachers don't pay anything for insurance. However, whenever insurance goes up, we levy a cost against support staff. Almost between 35 to 40% of our employees. When I speak up about this, it falls on deaf ears. Last year at the committee meeting, I got pretty rambunctious because it just kept falling on deaf ears. However, a proposal came to the board and we actually went down a couple bucks out of our paycheck because the board picked up that additional cost, which was nice. But in this climate, I see things not going well. Insurance is one of the reasons to supplement low-paying jobs. We got people that drive here twice a day. Some have 1 or 2 jobs. Some farm. They do all different kinds of capacities, but yet they still serve our community, and they're here every day. We bite the bullet because we know we're going to get insurance to get a lower wage. I mean, it's a trade-off. So if we were to make things whole with the support staff, it's like $15,000 to make it an even playing field across the field. Now, with that being said, there's also anomalies and deficiencies and inequities among the administrative too. Some get family plans, some don't. I mean, kind of weird. I think we've got a piecemeal system that's been put together year after year after year. I, and a couple others, have been advocates for this equity. In conclusion, there are many other topics I'd like to discuss with all you folks, but these are the ones I felt I had to share with tonight. 5 minutes is not enough. I want to thank you all for your attention in the matter, and you're welcome to reach out to me to address anything you'd like to talk about. Thank you for your help in this matter, and have a good night.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
What's the name of the committee you mentioned that you're on, you're president of?
LMC. I'm president of the association,
Okay. And then
and
the
also on the
committee
LMC committee,
What's LMC stand for?
Labor Management Committee.
Okay.
Margot's a member,
Okay. Okay.
Jessica Lee, Deanne,
Stacy Schultz,
Stacy Schultz, and
Jessica Lee.
and Melissa Palmer.
Okay.
We come up with recommendations or brainstorm how to either improve operations or, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is the Labor Committee and the Insurance Committee 2 different committees? Correct. Thank you.
And do we not have a board person on the labor committee like we do on the others?
No.
No? Okay.
Did we have one prior? Did we have?
No, labor management. It's not a board-appointed committee.
Got
It's
it.
one that we've just put in place.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we meet with them like once a year, like the administration meets with LMC once a year or something then, or?
The LMC meets as needed. We try and meet probably at least 2 times a year, but sometimes it might be more depending on what topics are coming up.
It might be a good idea, I think, because the board was one that generated putting the staff retirement, on for discussion this time around, because we were talking about the teacher's retirement at the last meeting, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And then we said, well, what about our staff? Like, why aren't we looking at that? So you brought that on, and it sounds like maybe we unintentionally skipped a step, maybe could have, we can sort that out, but.
I think that's been talked about, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is make sure our staff's being taken care of, and we may have inadvertently
I think that, yes,
skipped over
we
something,
can,
so,
yeah.
We'll work through that.
Chance?
Yeah. We'll follow up definitely on that, I think there'll be more questions.
We've talked about this for many years.
Okay.
This isn't anything,
Okay.
this isn't anything new. It's actually started before Sharon.
Okay, we will circle up with that committee
She's
somehow.
actually the one that brought it to the Labor Management Committee to talk about.
Okay.
And then that's when we went forward with it, is when she approached us
Okay.
at the meeting.
All right, perfect. We'll do a little bit more follow-up on that. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Okay. Next up is and I think that was the only one. I only had one for speaker tonight. So next is the student representative report.
So, kind of got a lot on this list this go around. So, towards the beginning of the month, there's a high school dance competition for like jazz competitions. And they received a Division II rating, which is a really good rating. And they were only a half a point away from the Division I rating. This past Saturday, there was the winter formal, and kids were really excited there because they got to dress in their PJs and play games, and hang out with their friends and dance and all kinds of other fun activities. There was a high school band concert on the 5th, and there's also a concert tonight, and that is with the choir as well. Upcoming on Thursday the 21st, NHS is having a chili fundraiser during the basketball games. This is to support like student needs throughout the building. And to like kind of get towards break a little bit, there's dress up days this week. Monday, which was today, there's Don't Be a Grinch. Tuesday is Twinkle Tuesday. Wednesday is Winter Wonderland Wednesday. Thursday is Ugly Sweater Day, and Friday is PJ Day. And they kind of go along with that. Students and staff are looking forward to hanging out with their family and friends and relaxing. As for sports, there are 2 upcoming basketball games this week. Tomorrow night against Earlham, and the other one is Thursday, the 21st, against West Central Valley. Wrestling, there is a girls' meet tomorrow night. It starts at 5. This is at West Marshall, and Saturday there's a boys' wrestling meet at EBF. And is there any questions?
Just one. When was the chili again?
That is Thursday, the 21st.
Okay, thank you.
I love it.
Love it.
Did you go to the dance competition?
No, I didn't.
Did you participate in the Grinch dress up today? It doesn't
No.
look like you did.
No, I'm a Grinch.
So you kind of did.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right. So move on to the principal's report. Ms. Woods?
All right. I kind of dug into the weeds of different things. I'm just trying to kind of share our current realities with you guys so that I know it's a lot of information at once. One thing I can talk about in more detail is if you want to scroll down to that next page. So I think I've used this term, grade level readiness, maybe the last time I spoke of it, and to me, the essential thing is for our teachers to know what's the expectation. And of course, you get here with standards, but those are bulky and in the weeds. And so I think it's important to really talk about skill-based pieces as well, and making sure the teachers are attending to, when they walk into my second grade classroom, here's what I think they're supposed to be walking in with, and these are the things I probably don't have a plan to teach because I think they already have this. And so a lot of those types of conversations going on about, when they walk in the door on August 23rd, what skills does that kid need to have in order to take off running and be successful right away in the next grade level. So having a lot of those conversations at the vertical setting where we have a preschool through fourth grade teacher at the table, having those kind of explicit conversations. I kind of dug in the weeds of WIN a little bit as well. WIN stands for What I Need, and it is an intervention and enrichment system invented by someone, I have no idea what her name is, but the philosophies are kind of foundational, and then a district can take that model and build it how it works for your kids and your people. And at Interstate 35 Elementary School, our model is skill-based, which is different than a lot of schools you walk into. So what can happen if you're not intentional is when you have kids in an intervention, you have a title reading teacher, for example, without intentionality, a kid may need title reading services in first grade and remain in title reading for a very long time without showing significant growth. And I think that comes from, I use the term like spray and pray, right? In that model, you're not being real zoned in. You're not exactly sure what that kid exactly needs, so you're just giving them a whole plethora of stuff and hope something sticks, and maybe that kid will grow. And obviously, that can be less effective than if you know precisely what you're aiming at, and you do that, and you make sure it worked, right? And so when I say skill-based, we use one of those things we talked about last time, a diagnostic, to determine what exact skills are a deficit. And then we teach explicitly to those skills one at a time. And we do, one thing that wasn't on the assessment sheet that I was thinking about after, should have been, is what we call progress monitoring. And that is whatever you're doing, right? It's kind of like in core instruction at that bottom tier when you're giving an assessment over the standard. But progress monitoring is more tied to a skill and typically used more in that tier 2 and tier 3 layers, right? But what we do is, let's say a kid takes the QPS, which is our phonics diagnostic, and they fail magic keywords, right? Make, take, bake. Okay, all of those make a long vowel sound because they have this E at the end. They fail that. And we assign all the kids in first grade who fail that skill to a group. And at the same time, every kid goes to a group, and all the kids that failed Magic E go to this group, and they get instruction, okay? And then we have this progress monitoring system set up, and I have to give Kelly McKinney a shout out, because when I first got here, I had ran a WIN system before, and one of the first times her and I were talking through this, she said something, well, I'll get the progress monitoring ready. And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean now? And she walked me through her thought process, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I've been missing this whole time. But Kelly built these skill-based progress monitoring sheets. It sounds silly and simple, and it is, but it was the magic piece, because what happens is every week I get progress monitored on my BOSS EE deficit, and I have to demonstrate just that skill and nothing else. And if I demonstrate that skill 3 times in a row with 90% accuracy or above, I get to move on to the next group. And it gives immediate, short-term celebration, right? It makes the teacher feel valued because what he or she is doing is working. It makes the kid feel valued because they see immediate growth and success, and thus they move on to the next skill level. So I tried to kind of outline that there. Obviously, you have to have a really good diagnostic system, and you got to have a really good team of people willing to put in all of what I just said into action for every single kid in the building, whether it be a deficit or an enrichment, and just kind of try to show you that the legwork is significant to do this. And ultimately, if you go back to our triangle diagram from last time, if you're doing things right, only 20% of your kids need this type of work, right? And we've talked about our scores aren't quite there yet. So we have a significant amount of kids getting below grade level skill support, right? But this team of teachers puts that work in every day. I shouldn't even say the term teachers, the staff. We have a significant, just they're all in every day, and it's working, and the kids are growing, and they understand the system. And what's come in this second year of doing this is the kids now understand it. So I can have a conversation with my first grade group and say, okay, our goal is to master this Bossy E. Here's how we master it. And when we do that, then you get to move on to the next group, that's R-controlled vowels, and have a conversation about that. And they know exactly where they're at, where they're trying to get to, what they got to do to get there. And their little 7-year-old brains are just knocking it out of the park. So it's a process, but it's one that is a significant amount of work, and our staff should really be recognized for what they're accomplishing with that. So.
To connect the dot for me on that.
Yep.
So when I subbed elementary, there were certain like periods or sections that was win period, and so I had certain kids that, some of the kids in the class I was teaching would leave, but then some would stay with me and some would come in, and we'd go to the back table and we'd focus just with that little group while the rest of the
Right.
class had something else. That group that I was teaching at that point in time was learning something specific that they were behind on. Is that what that was?
Correct,
Okay.
yep.
So
In
connecting
a
that
true
dot.
win model, you wouldn't
Okay.
have kids at their desk, and I don't know which particular
No,
group
they
you
were coming
had.
back to the back table, sat
Perfect,
around me,
yep.
and we focused on a specific
And
thing.
the win model, what she brought in was, they're all of our kids, right? So like, you have your homeroom, and you have your homeroom, and he has his homeroom, and before you implement win, you're trying to fix those problems in your room with your door closed, and your
Yeah.
problems in your room with your door closed. And win said, no, these are all our kids, and you have kids that need this skill, and you have kids that need this skill, and you have kids that need this skill. Let's put them together, let's be intentional, and use every adult we can
Yeah.
to do
So
that.
one win table, like for me, for example, is working on phonetics, where Melissa, let's say she was another teacher, half my class went over there. That group was lacking in another area, and she
Right.
was teaching. Okay, that makes sense. Just trying to connect that. That's what I
Yep.
thought you were talking about. Okay.
Yep. Any other questions for the elementary end for today? Talk your ears off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Weber.
All right, so my report just consists of the 2 items that I said I would bring to the board
Thank you.
for tonight's meeting. The first one we talked about last month was that Level 3 program. So I've tried to highlight some ideas in there for you to see ahead of time and kind of walk you through what it looks like. What I can tell you is, no matter what we do, this year was going to go with me going to Dr. Detlinger and saying, I need another sped teacher next year. I mean, that's the reality. So the Band-Aid is just another teacher. That would get us through next year probably, but it's not going to actually aim at what we need to provide for the kids that we have. So what we've seen over the last 6 to 12 months, and what we're going to see for sure over the next 6 months and into 18 months, is we're going to have kids that need a lot more. And so when you have teachers that are having to work one-on-one with students for up to 2 to 3 hours in a day, that teacher can no longer serve 10 to 12 students in a day, because a lot of those are going to be one-on-one minutes. So when you look at the Level 3 program that we're kind of throwing out there, it allows a room. And so what I told you last month was I was pretty confident we had it, but that I was still figuring some things out. For those of you familiar with Miss Vidraska's room, she has a very large classroom on the front half of her room that has a door that goes in. And then she has a connecting door to what I believe Miss Detlinger and then maybe Keegan before me, but maybe even before that, built out what was like an apartment behind. So you have a kitchenette and a clothes dryer and a stove and all this stuff and a dining room table and a living room, because it's life skills. And so for the kiddos that are in the needs of learning how to move on from high school and live by themselves and cook and clean and all that, those are the kiddos that Ms. Madraska was working with. We've gotten to kind of a point though where a large population of kiddos have graduated and we only have a couple left. And so Ms. Madraska has taken on a much larger need, at least this year and probably next year, with with level 1 kiddos in the middle school, because we have a large middle school group. And so she's kind of spread out with Ms. Baldwin and Ms. Lee on those level of kids. And so that need for that area right now isn't there as big as it was. But the truth is that in a handful of years, the younger kiddos I'm talking about are all going to be back in that situation, and we're going to need that again. And so being able to use her space where we have that larger classroom up front that a teacher would move down into, and we would have learning stations. So if you click on that facility space, this shows the classroom. And this mimics a lot of what Norwalk and Waukee are doing right now in some of their elementaries, where the door to that room, the main door, is down at the bottom of this here. And there's already kind of a break room, safe room that's there. There's a restroom already inside. The doors are all on the inside there. And then you have learning stations. So I know when years back, those would be separated by, let's say, file cabinets. Well, now you would do nice partitions and ideas to go around the room where a kid could come in and have a station with all these kiddos have associates with them. And they're coming in and you have at least one teacher. But in our model for next year, you would actually have 2 teachers, not new hires, just either ones we have or when we hire one, how it works out, that would be working with these kids simultaneously, working with the kids together in the center table, working the kids when maybe the associate center are going, taking them out to specials or going for a walk or a break, but then being able to intermix when possible. The additional teacher piece of this doesn't necessarily have to fit into here, but if it doesn't, that means it's fitting into teachers I'm taking out of our current program to do this. And so there's still kids that live on that roster that are going to have to be supplied by somebody, and that's that new hire. Now, the new hire could also go here. I'm not saying it's not, but what I do know is the one teacher that would be full-time in here is someone that is currently finishing up her degree in that alternative assessment piece that I talked about last month. She's the only one on staff that has that degree, and so she would be, and she right now works with almost all of our level 3 students. She would be undertaking this program into what she does. So the cool part about this is the door at the top there goes to that back room. Ms. Madraska, then her office, her space goes into that room. Nothing big changes there. But as our kids that are in here, and a couple are in that young to mid elementary right now, they can start kind of getting to know Ms. Madraska right away, because they're going to be doing a lot of those life skills as they get older into middle school and high school. They're going to be able to create that relationship with her at a younger age. I've even talked to her about her collaborating with Ms. Remingay in this room to what could they start doing with kiddos when they get to 3rd and 4th grade, because even though they may not be full on, I know my son's in 4th grade and can't do laundry, but they can start learning some of those skills in very small pieces, not in full class periods. So then that way when they do transition to learning some of the bigger skills that they get into middle school and high school, that foundation is already set. So the way I look at it is it's a need we have already, and one we know we're about to get hit with. These kids are either here or on their way, and in order to give them the best possibility to succeed, we need something like this. Like I said, I'm already going to be asking. I know I need the teacher because we're tight on minutes. Any one of my teachers would tell you that. And this, I'm not really asking for any more expense outside of us figuring out how to make those learning stations with desks. That's it. The space is already there. The principals love it because I'm not taking a gen ed classroom right now. We're able to kind of work within what we already have, so that opens up another classroom or office space for them. And it gives us a lot of years of capabilities to move forward with the current kids we have. So, questions from all of that?
How much time do we get, as new students are coming in, or as you know, new students are coming in that have a need, how much time do we have to put the plan in place for them? I mean, is it like 24-hour turnaround? Is it a week? I mean, or I don't know if there's like a strict deadline, but... So
that's a really big question.
Yeah.
So if we're talking, like last month I told you, we know a handful of these kiddos are coming because of that early access. So when they were 1 and 2 years old, they got collaborated with the AEA, which got collaborated with us, and so we know those are coming. So that's all planned out. February, March, we know that's coming in. What I can tell you, like, we just look at the last 3 months, we've probably had, and don't quote me on this, but I think we've had 6 move-in students from other districts that already had IEPs. So this wasn't like a, hey, we're trying to open enroll, and so we have a choice in the matter, or we know. They just moved in, and hey, we're starting next Monday. And they already have IEPs, which means we need to serve them the minute they walk in our doors. And so that takes it already, like we're all kind of maxed out, and now we're adding a teacher's minutes on SDI, we're adding associate minutes on a lot of those. That's some of our hardest, is filling those associate minutes or para minutes. But we've had it happen where it's a handful of days notice. Yep.
So I'm reading on your report right here. It says current IEPs, we have 87. Paras, we have 1-to-1 pairs for 10 students, total associates 29, 23 are sped department, 22 positions, and then 100 students being served total in our district. What's the 23 or sped department, 22 positions? Is that
We
just
have a couple half-time
Okay.
associates.
I was just
trying to be
figure out,
realistic.
I was
Yep. Couple half-time. So what we have right now is we have, and we did all last year too. One goes Monday, Wednesday, Friday is part-time. And
Okay.
one goes Tuesday, Thursday. They serve actually the exact same group. So to me, that's just two people. That's one position.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
And when you look at all those one-on-ones, though, where I'm not saying, there's a lot on there that aren't part of this. Because they're one-on-ones that can go fully out into all the gen ed classrooms. They still get pulled for their SDI, but they're out there with associate or para support, but they're not in the need category of here. Just like when you look at it, just because a student is a level 3, that doesn't necessarily mean that student is all of a sudden in this type of program. It may not be what they need. Where the flip side is, I have a level 2 student that is alternative assessment and will take advantage of something like this, whether we have it or not. He's going to be with that teacher for all of his core classes, this spring, no matter what, even though he's a level 2. So don't get too, the weighting is the weighting. That's just what the IEP weighting is.
And then the only other question I had, have you put together a little budget or anything for what you need to make that classroom happen?
I have not, no. Only because I'll be honest, if budget's the only thing that's going to keep me from it, we're going to be fine, because we can make do with what we have. You know what I mean? I can come up with partitions, I can come up with it. Would I like to be able to go in and say, we want it all to match, we want to do that? Sure, but that's the next step. Yep. So.
And because there's such a growing demand for this area in all of the schools, is there grants or anything that the states, is there anything out there to help support?
No, because we get waiting for them. So we get money for the students.
Okay, true.
Can we use any of the COVID money? 'Cause let's be real, that's what did some of this.
Yeah, that's done at the end of
Being at
this
home
year.
for a year.
Yeah, that's done at the end of this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only question I had last board meeting, we had asked for some statistics on like objectives and stuff. Are you still working on that to bring that to us?
For
I think it's the second piece of
the effectiveness of the program.
that would be my next thing. Yep.
Oh, okay.
So if we're done with the first thing, we can go to the next
Okay.
thing.
Brayden, did you get the 504 number?
Ooh, I did. I sent that. No, I sent that. I'll get it for you. I'll even shoot it. So. I ran out of here last time, if you don't remember.
I do remember that.
Stuff going on, yeah.
I will ask them. No more questions about that one?
Nope.
Okay. All right, the second part of my report was talking about our actual program as a whole, entire district. And so I went through and kind of highlighted the big things that we work with on a daily basis and how we decide if something's successful or not. First, I would like to underline that all special ed teachers are evaluated on that basis the same way by administrators as all gen ed teachers. So that process is the same no matter what. But if I'm answering it more from stepping away from that, hey, is this working or not, is the way I understood the question. So one of the biggest things that we do that we implemented last year is that goal inline trend data. So you can click on that example, has no names, it's all dummy dates and minutes and stuff. But every single teacher has one of these. The teachers go through, they have all their students, they have all the information about their IEPs, and then I ask that every 2 weeks that they are going in and marking on the students' goals if they're matching that trend line. So in the special ed world, you have an IEP that lasts 1 year, and when you are sitting at the meeting, you say, here's our goal in one area out of, doesn't matter how many goal areas they have, but for this one goal area, for them to be successful in 1 year, here's a graph that says that as we go every 2 weeks and plot those lines, for them to meet the goal, this is the trend they should stay on throughout that whole year. And we're always reviewing that. This sheet gives a quick snap of a student, the number of goals they have, and are they currently on that trend to meet that goal. Meeting a goal does not mean you are, unless the goal is to be at grade equivalence, right, to be with their peers. A goal could be that in reading you're currently, let's say, reading 2 years behind at words per minute or comprehension, whatever that goal is, and that goal is set to help you grow faster than your peers, but that doesn't mean that that goal is automatically to be where your peers are at. The goal is you hit the goal and we make the goal harder, so that hopefully you're climbing quicker to getting where your same age peers are at. So this is that first easy one for myself and for teachers to see. If all of a sudden we're seeing lots of yellows, if we're seeing reds, like those are easy question marks. Like why are we behind? And we talk about that as PLC teams, both at the building level and at the district level, because we meet in both groups. But what are we doing differently? Just because you have a yellow, or just even, heck, if you even have a red, anybody that's been in an IEP meeting knows, especially as the kids get older, it seems like they go like this. And it just depends on, was it going into a holiday break? There was a game that night? It doesn't matter. Sometimes you're going to be below that game line. That's okay. But all of a sudden you see multiple behind that line, it's, okay, what's going on differently? Is there something different at home? Is there something different at school? Is the instruction that we are providing not the right instruction? What's not clicking? And it allows you to ask questions. I know Mrs. Woods' the elementary team really dug in actually today with the AAA on going a step further on every single goal with the AAA to say, what are we each doing so that's working positively, what's working negatively, what's working, what isn't. And so we're going to kind of take that model and spread that to the other teams then to even dig deeper than just this rough outline. If you go away from this, the program as a whole is identified in every single IEP. It's the only way that I can do it, because every single kid has a different IEP, has different goals, nothing matches. And so as I am working with teachers leading up to an IEP meeting that have questions, that are building out that IEP to be able to have a conversation with the parents and the families when they're in here, we're talking about what is realistic and what isn't. If we're talking about a 45-day out, if we're talking about an exit, I mean, it can be everything in between. Or we're talking about, hey, it looks like kiddo's doing really good here, but we're also seeing some issues in writing, and he doesn't even have a writing goal. Do you think we could do some tests in writing so we can see where he's at? Because that hasn't been identified. Those conversations are ones I'm having all the times with all the teachers. And then as we sit in an IEP meeting, one of the biggest things that I can always tell is, what's the relationship between the family, the student, and the teacher? More so than me, or Ms. Woods, or Mr. Beckel, or Ms. Whitson sitting there, because there should be this kind of two-way road of conversation. It's really obvious to me if I'm sitting in a meeting and that parent has not heard from that teacher in a long time. You can tell. It's a weird meeting. It doesn't go right. A lot of times there's constant communication, so the meeting is really more, hey, this is what we've come up with. What do you think? Would you like us to add anything? It should be kind of like the ending of one point and starting with another. But those are things that I can't graph those for you. I can't tell you stats, but I can tell you that is ongoing all the time, and that's my job. That's what I have to do. So, and we have those conversations. I would also put on there, even though I started a year and a half ago putting the exits on the board report, I like that we're always adding to them. We actually have a kid that's 2 days away, so hopefully I can put a 5 there in a couple days. But our success or failures as a program is not exits. It was funny, I didn't realize this. I was sitting with a teacher in an exit last week, and the teacher said to the parent, this is my first one. It was like a huge moment. And that teacher is awesome. And I know that teacher is awesome. And they've been here for a handful of years. They've just never been able to go through an exit. It just depends on where you're at on the line. If you get a kiddo that you can get through, or sometimes it's later on. So, yeah. So, like I said, we do that in our smaller PLCs. We do that in our district PLCs. From all of that, what questions do you have? What can I help?
Well, first off, thank you for pulling that together. It was very insightful on that. Anything else? All right. Good. Thank you, Mr. Robert. Thanks, Brady. Ms. Whitson not here?
She's not here today.
Okay. Mr. Beckel.
But if you have questions about her plan, just let me know and I'll make sure she gets them.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you. So last time we met, we had some conversation about some work we need to get done at the high school with the SRG. One of the biggest takeaways I had was that we had a lot of work around level 4s, the opportunities for students to demonstrate level 4 understanding. Also, clear communication from teachers about expectations, like how to reach each one ahead of time. Communication with parents, communication with students, create some of that transparency. So it's not a mystery how I get each score. So one of the first steps I was able to take between last meeting and this meeting, I've got that information on here. We did some coaching sessions. So it was held on Wednesday the 13th. Met with each department during the plan periods, or if they didn't have a planned time that lined up, we got them a sub for that period. So we had a floating sub for the day. I had each teacher bring an example of a level 4 task that they've given, or one that they were planning for this next unit, along with a rubric for that task. And the reason I keep saying task is because I want to get away from thinking about everything as a test, because it's not all written tests. Sometimes they are, which is fine, but sometimes it's a performance task. I usually like art, PE, things like that. Sometimes it's a written paper, so it's not always a multiple question test. So we had each teacher bring one, and we just kind of processed through how, as teachers, we need to provide that opportunity, not like have it be something that's like pie in the sky, like hard to reach. It's got to be something that we put in front of them, give them that opportunity. So we talked about how can we make this simpler for educators. So we looked at the depth of knowledge charts. There's a few different ones I've got linked in there. They call them DOKs. But basically, you're looking at a verb of what is required of the student. So if a standard is written at DOK 2, where it's saying students should be able to organize information in blah, 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 blah. So what we say is apply that next level verb, so a level 3 verb. Okay, compare and contrast two systems, or find information and develop an argument and cite those points. So with each department, we talked about what this could look like in those departments. In math, we talked about, rather than looking at like getting a % of questions right, scaffold that test so that each section is different level of difficulty, so to say. So the first section might be 2-3 questions that are written at a lower level, and they got to apply the next skill level to the next section, and then put everything together for that level 3, and then at level 4 is some kind of application. And that might, we talked about things like, Dan actually saw one of these when on a visit, sitting in the class, he's like, hey, I use that one every day when I'm ordering materials. Mm-hmm. So I said, right there's an opportunity for a level 4. Okay, you provide this example and say, well, let's ensure that this company is ordering these products is within budget. How can you apply this math skill to ensure that you've got the right amount of product? Or how can you apply this skill to ensure this wall is plumbed? Different things like that. So the application of it. So that's how each department can come up with that level 4. Sorry, a lot of conversation there. Just wanted to make sure I'm hitting everything. I've also asked teachers to keep their PLC minutes notes accessible for me, so I can kind of monitor and see how they're coming along. That way I can help answer questions, help guide parents the right way. So they're going to be including their level 4 tasks or their assessment, and then like their rubrics that go along with it. So if there's questions like, hey, my kid landed on a 2, why is that? Well, we can pull that up. Here's what the rubric looks like. Here's what that assignment is, and hopefully that teacher's providing good feedback. So we talked about the importance of the grade comments, right next to the description of what's going on in class, how important it is, and how important it is to be very transparent with those rubrics. Many teachers are finding ways to include those rubrics or the different standards that are expected there right on the assessment or right on the task for the day. So looking at ways to just build more transparency. Any questions on that?
I do, but I think I'll probably save it. We have another discussion later on down, that has some of the stuff also here for there.
Okay.
Did you guys work on like the ones at all? I know we talked about that.
Yeah, so
like
that...
on how easy it is to get a 1?
Yeah. So part of the conversation we had, and I think that situation that was specifically brought up, worked with that teacher probably a couple months ago on that topic. But really it's that understanding that teachers, we get to create the rubrics. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we create that rubric, we got to be very intentional about writing those questions at certain levels. What happens is, let's say that I'm trying to equate a percent score to a rubric score. That's what kind of creates that mess. So that's why you have to be very intentional with planning out what a level 1 task is, or how a student demonstrates level 1 understanding, level 2 understanding. Because if you think about that one test question that the kid answered, what if there's only 4 questions and that was a level 1 question? You know what I mean? So that's what we're trying to navigate through, is like, hey, we have the power, the autonomy as teachers to develop these rubrics, as long as we're communicating it real well with the students. Here's how you land on one. And helping the teacher understand, like, if you felt like that was zero work, give that score of 0. It's almost like providing permission. You know what I mean?
That was exactly where I was at, because I
Yeah,
remember
so
a
I
personal
think-
situation.
Yeah, and I
I think it was
think
2 out of 6 questions, and I got a 1, and I was like, as far as I'm concerned, you got a 0.
Right, right.
So,
So I think it's sometimes that misperception of that, or that pressure maybe that.
and maybe
teachers
those
may
questions
feel.
were really hard that got answered.
Yeah, so
So-
it's like you have permission to give a 0 on something like that if you feel like it's not showing the proper understanding or knowledge.
I wasn't gonna dive in, but he asked questions. So
Oh, that's right.
do the teachers know that they have that autonomy? Like, if a kid comes in and there's 10 questions on a test, and the kid's like, I'm just gonna answer 1 question because I know I get a 1 and I'll get to play wrestling. The teacher could be like, guess what? You're not gonna wrestle. Like,
Right.
you're, you know.
That was a
it's
big part of our conversations, like,
Okay.
especially with the few that kind of had that feeling,
Yeah.
was, yeah, you have the autonomy to do that. You could give that 0,
Yeah.
you know, and provide, you know, here's why you got the 0. Communication is just so key for us. I mean, we really got, I mean, especially as we're kind of learning the new system, is really communicating with parents, communicating with kids.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be surprises, it shouldn't be a gotcha, it should just be like, here's the rubric, here's how you did. You know?
I appreciate that. If you haven't noticed, my biggest thing, and what Dan is, and Ms. Good and I have had amazing conversations around this topic, and I really do love my conversations with her on it. Grading should not, you know, represent behavior. Like, I get that, she's helped me get that. However, we are producing responsible citizens.
Right.
We're not producing, and it says so right in our thing right here,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So we have to be able to hold kids accountable,
Yeah.
and that's all I'm looking for in this process. We can get deeper in there.
It's tricky, I mean, some of the stuff that we're trying to navigate as teachers and administrators is, how do we structure our classroom routines to better fit standard reference grading? You know, or we can't just say, here's the worksheet, I used to give you a % completion on that worksheet, or whatever it might be. It's, here's our task for the day, how can we engage students in conversations, and how can we monitor their understanding of the material as we go?
Yeah.
So it changes a little bit of the teaching philosophy. So it's kind of, again, that's kind of the bumpy part.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been teaching a while, you've been doing things like, and you've been rocking it for so long, asking them to change, sometimes that's the tricky piece.
Change is hard.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the comments in the description section, because I think that's really important for parents to be able to see, because I think sometimes when we look at it, we're like, oh, I mean, it's not clear to us because we're not in the classroom, so that's very helpful for
And
parents.
it's a totally different view. I mean, when we were growing up, it was, here's your %, here's the homework you didn't
Yeah.
turn in, get it done, you know, like, so it's just, it's a different way of looking at it.
Thank you.
The second piece on here, now, you want me to cover all this? You got a chance to read that. Don't want to waste too much of your time. The next piece I got on here is the health unit. And I know that was definitely some buzz.
I think she's got that on her report too, so.
We'll just do it at the same time.
All right, so
Yeah.
we'll talk later.
Yeah.
That's fine. And then the last thing, just kind of looking at a performance profile, I've been asked to kind of go over that. Just kind of hit a couple key points. Coming in as a new principal in this building, I kind of kept my goals to a minimum coming in, because the high school level specifically implementing SRG, which is a big change, right? We're talking about that. And a new student information system within the campus, try to take it kind of easy. So a lot of these are personal goals for me, and working with students and communicating with parents, and being responsive when we have issues and taking care of things, because a lot of those things are what lead into that boundaries and expectations, adult to student relationships, you know, just providing some of that consistency, treating students with respect, you know, being responsible when they report things. That way the office can be a safe space for them as well. So I've been working hard to try to build that. So a lot of those are personal goals right now, and as we kind of get more and more comfortable with a couple of the other major changes we've got going, we can start setting some new goals.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
All right. Superintendent's report, Dr. Denley.
So just a couple of quick things. The insurance committee, I wanted to give you background. That's going to start to ramp up here a little bit in the next couple of months. We get our renewal rates typically in February, around the 1st of February, which then helps us kind of set for negotiations and work through how we can, again, as Mr. Stroh said, try and keep our benefits really solid and strong for our employees without a lot of additional costs. But I think everybody understands that the way insurance works is there always seems to be additional costs. And so this committee was formed about 4 years ago just to get a better understanding on how we're communicating to our staff, what our plans actually are, how do we meet the needs of a majority of the people if we can. And Mr. Stroh was right, we've had lots of conversations about how rates are where they are. A lot of that's been negotiated over years of time. And so I think that committee, it feels vested in the process of what we do here. I think we have representatives from the admin, school board, we have support staff and teachers all represented, and I think the process is really meant to be inclusive. And so that's something that you will get updates on, because obviously we'll make recommendations to the board about what we want to do with insurance in any given year, and we also, because we don't negotiate that, but we think it's such a value to our employees that we want their input, so that's why we have that committee. So that is one that will be starting up again here now that we're getting time for renewal. We'll evaluate the plan, but you'll get more information on it. And I just wanted to make sure you guys understood that that's what that committee is designed for, is to kind of think big picture, but also keep in mind all of our people. And so that's just some background.
Couple questions.
Yeah.
Who's on the insurance
Me.
committee? You are? Okay. And I heard you say something, it doesn't negotiate?
Right. No,
It's not part
insurance.
of
It's not part of negotiations.
Oh, so like contract negotiations?
Correct.
But we can say, hey, we don't want to increase
Correct.
deductible or increase,
Correct,
monthly pay. Okay.
right. So the insurance
Sorry, I thought
committee will
you
bring,
meant-
now, the insurance committee will bring some recommendations to the board about how we want to handle that, and then that just gives us feedback as far as how we negotiate wages.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome, thank you.
Other questions about that group? Okay. Facilities update, we had our facilities meeting last week on Wednesday. I thought it was really a good meeting about, kind of how we got to where we are, some of the concerns about how we're allocating money for the phases of the long-range plan. We talked about the funds that are used for kind of ongoing expenses, but then we talked about the big kind of big facilities project funds. And so from that feedback, we met with the mechanical engineers. We also met with the rep who sells the units. I'm talking specifically right now about our high school science, and making sure that we have air conditioning in that unit or in those spaces as they're working through it for the summer. One of the suggestions was we do an addendum to our plan. However, the team went with the option of creating the money in the phase for that to be done, and working directly with the person who works on our air conditioning project to do it. So they'll work in conjunction with the group that's doing the project, but we will actually contract it separately, but the funding will come from that source. So it does allow us to meet the needs of the air conditioning in that process, but then also continue with the phase of that project that we're slated to do.
Okay, so can I pause there? There's a lot.
You bet.
Just to get it in, basically what I heard was, we talked about it, we decided we're going to get air conditioning as part of the project when we open up the science room.
Correct. Yep.
Cool. All right. So we didn't have to come back and approve or vote or anything? You figured out how it worked?
Yep, we have it worked out that it'll just be, we'll reserve that money back in that phase, and,
Okay.
yep,
Did they get the power stuff figured out?
I believe so. We just talked about that again today, so I believe so, yes.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm just gonna plant the seed, if we could do a quick follow-up to figure out how we do the math room and everything else in that hallway eventually. That'd be
It's
Yeah, oh, yeah.
all in the,
the
Yeah,
larger plan or whatever you want.
Yeah.
no, it's all this.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this one is just for the science, but we're
the
going to go
two
back and
rooms
figure
for
out
sure,
how-
the science, and when so we work with a gentleman who's doing our middle school air conditioning, and that's who we've talked to. He bids a lot of our projects, he probably knows more about our heating and cooling than anybody in the building. And he's very, very good about understanding schools, understanding processes. The challenge is that he's very busy. And so it's a matter of how many can he get to, because he's already doing the middle school, and we're gonna have him do the 2 high school if he bids on it and wins the bid, right? But then, how many more is it feasible? And the nice thing about working with him specifically, which might be in our favor, is he has access. This Christmas, he's gonna come in and do a ton of prep work, because the building will be closed for a week and a half, so he'll come in and do a ton of prep work, and then he'll do more at spring break,
Yeah.
and then he'll come in and do some of the stuff that needs to happen in the classrooms or at the beginning of summer.
Okay.
But it's just a matter of timing. We don't get usually a ton of bids on air conditioning and heating and cooling, but we're working with him, and I feel pretty confident. Science for sure, but possibly some others as well.
All right, so we're actively trying
Yeah.
to use phase one
Correct.
funding for the others. That's awesome, thank you.
So I'm going to jump to D real quick. I think it would be really beneficial for the board to consider what I'm going to call standing agenda items, things that you want to see on the agenda either monthly or quarterly, or, so I think about the special ed information that Brayden shared with you. To me, facilities should probably be on every agenda, and I think we just put it in as part of the reports. And then as you guys have information that you want included in that, if you just let me know, we can create either a template that we continually fill in with updates on what's happening, or, you know, if you have questions, you can ask and I can answer them in that, and then we can have a discussion at the board table, so that it's consistent. And we can always go back, and if somebody has a question, just check the facilities update minutes. So I would recommend that we do that with facilities. If there are others that you guys would like to see, we see that a lot with our finances. Ted gives you an update on those every month, but we can be a little bit more formal about some of these others. So I would recommend we do that with facilities, but if there are others, then just let me know.
I think the academic planning update, to
Yep.
continue to have
Okay.
that, just because there's so many moving parts,
Yep.
a lot of conversations around
And
that.
a lot of that comes out in the principal reports.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll just coordinate that and
Pull it out.
figure out how to, we'll figure out how to balance that. So I'll put that with the admin team, we'll work on that one. So academic planning, facilities, any others that, and you can let me know. I don't need to know them all right now, but that'll give us some direction. I'll bring a couple of sample templates maybe to the next meeting, and you guys can decide what you like, what you want that's not there, what you want to see different. We can structure that based on feedback.
And then I did have a question back
Yeah.
on the facilities before we were past it.
Right.
How are we doing on the other bids for stuff still?
We got a roof bid today,
Got a roof bid
but we're
today.
waiting on, I think, 2 or 3 more.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
What
that's
was
the only one I had.
What part of the roof?
It was all 4 sections that we still have to do.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it's gonna
Yep.
fix the,
Yeah, the main hallway where it tied
Where I got all the
in, yeah,
pictures.
kind of going,
Carrots.
it's really that whole section going kind of east and west in the
If
main
that's not gonna
corridor.
fix, is that also a bid to fix down there on the south side of the elementary gym? Or that's kind of a different deal, that's not really.
Yeah,
Roof as
and
much as
that,
the-
yeah, let me follow up with Rick about that
Yeah.
one specifically,
Okay.
because I don't know that that's necessarily roofing, but I think he's talked with people about what that needs for fix.
Okay.
So I can follow up and put that on the facilities update.
and I can appreciate that you won't have answers to this right now, but I do want to bring it up just because it's brought it up, you know, by somebody who spoke this evening. I did not know we didn't have air conditioning in the kitchen. Are we planning on, you know, making that part of the phase one thing too, or has that not been discussed?
It hasn't been discussed as part of phase 1, but we can talk about it, but it's kind of similar to the other, you know, the other parts of the high school. This part of the building hasn't been done yet.
Yeah, okay.
So if there's a something that's capped off and we can uncap it and send air to the kitchen, then, I mean, that to me would be the easiest fix.
Yeah,
But
if we can look into what our
Yeah.
options are there, I think that would be good. And then I think the other thing I heard was the bus barn, so,
Yeah, and I don't, that one's kind of a little bit trickier, just because most people aren't there for a long period of time. You know, you check in for 10 or 15 minutes before, there are a couple that work, and so we have to talk through where it needs to be, but
Yeah.
that's just a matter
if
of,
there's an office or
Yeah.
something that they sit in or something
Yeah.
like that, I don't
Yeah.
know.
There's a break room in there.
A break room,
Right.
get it in the
Right.
break room or something. Just if we can look at, having
Right.
conversations with that committee, I think,
Yep.
and figure out what our options are there. So,
Yep.
Okay. But yeah, definitely the kitchen, I can't imagine with all that cooking here and there, how hot it gets, so I want to
90 degrees.
look at that, yeah.
The steam off of the
Yeah.
dishwasher too is a big
Oh,
heat.
think about that. So yeah, if we can figure out how to fit that in.
so before the classrooms?
I'll speak
So
for me. I
like-
think the students are probably first, but I don't know. That's
So-
me.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, you and I sat down and went through this stuff. I thought we were getting bids for the rest of the high school anyway, after we get.
We'll get an
past this
idea of how
first
much it is for each of the classrooms. Mhm.
And the kitchen. We
Yeah,
can do each of the classrooms in the kitchen.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's the
Okay.
high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything but the
Schedule the
gymnasium.
entire-
Yeah, everything but the
It's
gymnasium.
kind of where,
Uh-huh.
it's kind of where I thought we had
Yeah.
left it, is everything.
yeah, but also, we know that we are not going to be able to do it all this summer, right? And so it's a matter of how do we want to prioritize that?
Yeah.
And so that becomes the conversation, so,
No, we say, we had that workshop, and I guess I'm just gonna ask, because we're not gonna be able to afford it, or you don't think the guys gonna have time to do it?
both.
Okay, I think we need to have another conversation then, because I don't think we all took everything from last Wednesday, the same.
Okay,
So we'll just, I'll
I
shoot
didn't
you an
know
email
that the
on
kitchen-
where
yeah.
I thought we were,
Yeah.
kind of what we had planned to figure out. And because, when we talked to Travis Mechanical this week, I mean, we all understood how much more everything's going up again. And will again.
correct.
All right. Okay. I'll send you an email
Okay.
on it tomorrow. I just want to clarify a couple questions.
Yeah,
And I want to make sure I word it right.
sure.
Okay.
The SiAC update, we did meet, this is a board-appointed group, so Jessica was able to be there with us, so feel free to add anything as we work through this. I did include the minutes from that. We talked about the Iowa performance profile and understanding that at a deeper level. There are a couple of scores on there, some are centered around post-secondary readiness that we want to have maybe a better understanding on and talk about how do we work towards increasing scores on that section of that assessment. We had some great insight about relationships and getting students to understand how those survey questions really impact not only them as they rush through it, but also the teachers and possibly the systems. So that was a good conversation about the Iowa performance profile. Every year, we are asked to talk about course enrollment data, and that's one that, again, we offer a lot of classes, and some classes tend to be more populated by females than males, or vice versa. And so just having the conversation about why that is, or what we could possibly do to make that more balanced is the whole piece for that section. I just provided a real quick overview of the work-based learning program to that group. We do have a lot of students that go on to work beyond high school, not onto like a junior college or a college or even a military career. So how are we using some of the programs we have here? And I wanted them to understand, the group to understand what that program consisted of and how we have different modules in that every year. Ms. Dutchery will be here to go over that with all of you at a later board meeting when it's not so heavy with just kind of orienting. We also talked about talented and gifted. when do services for talented gifted begin? And then, once you're identified, are you always talented? And how does that work? We're working on the plan for that program right now, so that was good feedback from the group. And then we also have the health curriculum, and I'll just kind of lead into the next one with this. And I want to talk some big picture, and I'm going to let Mr. Beckel talk about some specifics. But when there are concerns about curriculum, I think it's really important to understand how we approach it. Let's say a parent calls and says, my student brought home this worksheet, and I don't think it's appropriate. That's exactly how it should happen, right? They call the principal, or they call the teacher and say, explain to me what's happening. And so then what happens is that kind of triggers a chain reaction of several other things. So we're a little unique here. Natasha Cooper and I share the curriculum director title, and she does a lot of the day-to-day work on that. I'm available for questions with that. I do some of the big picture things, but I also look at curriculum reviews, and she might take on textbook adoptions or whatever. And so when a question about a course comes up, what we'll do is we'll look and say, okay, what is it that we need to teach? Like, what are we obligated to teach? So in this case, the question is around the traditional sex ed classes. And the concern didn't really come from the standards, but it came from the actual tools being used to teach it, so the worksheets. And so I'll let Mr. Beckel kind of address how that works from that very low level, and then I'll talk about how we look at it at the next level. So,
What you want me to talk about?
so when you get a question from a parent about a worksheet, what do you do?
Well, first thing I do is I go talk to the teacher, they help me understand this. Because a lot of times it's just, like, where did this come from? Where did you get this? What's the point? What's the significance? How does it relate to the standards? Let me talk about this situation.
You can.
So when I went to the teacher and said, can you talk to me about this? He says, yeah, he goes, I got that last year because it was his first year teacher last year. And he said, I didn't have a technical curriculum or formal curriculum like Glencoe or whatever.
Textbook.
And he said, I went on the Teachers Pay Teachers and I just grabbed everything I could so that I could teach a unit on.
So Teachers Pay Teachers is a website.
It's a website.
That they pull content
Yeah,
down.
so teachers will put things up and then they'll pay each other for their content.
Okay.
And he found something that he liked, that it seemed comprehensive, and he said, I'm grabbing this, and it had PowerPoints, worksheets, all that stuff was kind of built into what he purchased from this person. And he just went and got, like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, like, should I teach all this? And at the time, he was kind of given the, yes, teach it all, you know.
This was last year.
This was last year.
Okay.
Just, yep, covered all. So he went to the class and covered it all last year, and used the same things to introduce his unit this year. And, yeah. So, it's the conversation is, let's go ahead and scrap these pieces of it and stick to some of the lighter topics.
Yeah.
I don't want to disrespect anybody, we're just gonna, you know.
The topics that are in the
Right.
in the standards, or in our code,
Focus
because we
on
have it,
the standards.
because we actually have a board policy on what we teach in health,
Yep.
because of this very reason.
Yep.
And so it's some of the topics are drinking and how it impacts you, it's sexual development, how do kids change and their bodies change, it's,
The topics in our board policy make sense to me.
yes,
There was
yes.
nothing controversial in our
So
board.
this is the first year teacher, like first year ever teacher?
Yes, last year.
Last year.
So just curious if you guys have like mentor teachers or like success coaches that come in and should, like, what does that program look like for those teachers?
Yeah, we've got a high school mentor teacher that meets with new teachers
Or
regularly.
only one for the whole, all new?
Right.
Okay.
And usually I don't think, again, I don't know, it's only my first year, but I don't think our turnover is that huge where they have more than a couple teachers I'm mentoring.
Except for last year.
Last year's a bigger year.
Yes.
So yeah, there should be conversations being had. And one of the biggest things that we kind of found, like, one of the first things that says, like, hey, buddy, let's be more ahead of this conversation, communication of the parents. Like, here's the topics that are coming up, and then the opportunity to opt out of those topics. So just, those are some of the things that he and I have been working on.
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing is in this conversation is if you're sticking to what's in the board policy, what's actually teach, there's actually nothing I don't know, maybe there are some that parents want to opt out,
Right.
but when I looked at it, there's not an opt out. But what was being taught was not in the board
Right.
standard policies,
Right.
so.
And I think that was just a communication from last year and having that go-ahead, and I think he did ask, right? He asked the administrator and said, should we be teaching this?
I don't know
And
if you taught it last year, because my child took it last year, and she said she had seen that and never had brought it to my attention, because I would have watched it.
Same with mine.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
so,
I
and that's what the teacher was
But
like.
she said, she prefaced it with too, when he taught last year, I absolutely hate doing this, I'm sorry, guys, but I go through this, and I'm thinking, why wasn't he talking to his mentor or someone about the same?
I
Do I have to
think
go over
Adam
this?
tried to gracefully go over this without getting into the weeds. But if you hear what he's saying the previous administrator had a conversation with the teacher, according to the teacher, and when your boss tells you to do something,
If you know Mr. Bauer, he was very uncomfortable with this topic.
No, and that's what was really, I was just saying, I didn't know if there was a program, because I know like with us, it's, because I mentor and any new stuff, they come through
So-
before they even teach it. It's like, well, we don't need to do that, or we don't need to do that, and
I
I
think
just.
somebody's been probably doing some digging with the standards, and it's hard because these aren't like specifically laid out like you will be teaching these things.
No, and it's not. In fact, the state of Iowa, and I spent a lot of time reading laws this week, explicitly does not go into detail. So we have adopted, the Board of Education has recommended, they don't mandate the national standards on health, they recommend that you use it. The national standards in themselves aren't necessarily controversial.
Right.
It was just a curriculum we were using, went actually, what I would consider beyond the resources, went beyond the national standards and definitely way over the line of our board policy standards, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so that's been fixed, and so
Yeah.
that's how it works at that level. Then it comes to kind of us as the curriculum team, and we'll work with the teacher in a case like this and say, okay, if this is what is in board policy, or this is what our standards relate to, what units do we have? Are they all covered? Do we need to find supplemental materials? What's appropriate for that? And so we just do a crosswalk between sometimes the resource. So in our case, we have a resource that we've purchased for the teacher to streamline those standards a little bit. But then also what's missing, what do we need to add? And then what can you leave out? That's maybe additional information that might be more controversial that we really don't need because it's not in our policy. And so that's the level that we're at now, is we're working through that process. Mrs. Cooper and I are working through that process with the standards, the board policy, and then the resource that we have, and then working with our teacher to make sure that they do feel confident that what they have is meeting the needs, that if they have any questions like, this makes me uncomfortable, we talk through, is that necessary? Because obviously, if it's uncomfortable to some extent, it's probably something that we shouldn't be really thinking about. But sometimes topics are uncomfortable for a variety of reasons. So I just wanted people to understand how that process works, and that we do want you to contact the principal if there's something like this, because it does generate then next steps and conversations, because that's how the process is designed. So
In summary on this, as I understand it, our action items for this, we took, for the large part, the teachers pay teachers and went, you're gone. And then we took the Glencoe book curriculum, and now you and Ms. Cooper are going through the Glencoe book and saying, okay, this we're not going to do, this we're not going to do, and you're going to align with.
based on the board
That's what
policy
they got going forward.
and the standards,
Okay.
yep.
All right.
Yeah.
I will say,
Can I
the teacher,
just
though, the
say,
teacher
part of
could-
the issue was, he had his student books, but he did not have a teacher's book or any of the teachers' worksheets.
So you didn't know that content was in there?
And we just ordered those this year, Mr.
Oh,
Beckel gave it
okay.
to me, and we ordered those for him,
Okay.
so.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I will say, the teacher pay teacher stuff isn't bad.
No,
Just
yeah.
so I know, you know, but it's like, you can go
But
through
it's
what's in there
not-
and say, hey, this
Yeah, but
works
it's
with
also
this
not,
topic.
it's not reviewed, it's
Yeah.
not,
No,
I mean, it could
exactly.
be,
It doesn't come into the curriculum, that's more of
Good
a,
tool.
Yeah.
and the thing with that is the teacher pays for that, school doesn't pay for that.
Right.
And it's a lifesaver thing.
I'm actually
Your teacher's like, I just need some help with this unit, thank you.
The
Yeah.
first time I subbed math
Yeah.
for Miss Erickson, I went out there and downloaded some math worksheets, and actually, I bought stuff off
Yeah.
teacher by teacher, so I know it's good, but probably not best place to do.
It's not where we want to necessarily build our
That can be
curriculum.
questioned and looked at for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
because I've gotten stuff, I'm like, that's not going in my classroom, but this will.
We're good on this item, or no?
So just to follow up, we'll
Yeah.
take this to the SIAC and review with them, and then they'll give us feedback because they're our parent community.
Yep.
And then we'll go back and look at their suggestions, and then we'll do a follow-up with you guys, but really the process is
We don't have
meant.
to worry about any of that.
No,
You should-
Email to us.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
went from
you should.
DEFCON 1 down to 3. We're, okay.
Because I can absolutely understand, because that's exactly what I took from, like what
Yeah.
Danielle was saying. That was exactly what I took from it the first time I heard about it, was
Yeah.
someone said, oh, no, just teach what's in there and threw it out there. I get that. I just, as long as I get down, I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for adding it to the
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you for the discussion, walking
Yeah.
through that.
Thank
That's
you.
very helpful.
Always open for conversations.
Thank you.
Okay, the other thing that we want to spend a little time on is a result of our academic work session with the board. And the task to us was really kind of look at what the concerns were that were brought up by the people, the teachers, so community members, teachers, some of the things that we at an administrative level have talked about, and what is our plan of action? And we know that each school is a little different as far as how they're attacking this or addressing this for some different reasons. They're at different developmental levels, and communication is a little different in some of them. So if you look at this document, the left-hand side is kind of our big takeaways. So when we had the academic meeting, and we had the teachers and parents addressing us, addressing the board and giving feedback, one of the big takeaways was an opportunity for GPA concerns, accountability. We included academic dishonesty in that section, so if somebody cheats, how do we deal with that? We had quality teaching practices, so even though we've got solid teaching practices, you do have to have a little bit of a shift when you go to standards reference teaching. And so it's just a matter of how are we making sure we're supporting those practices. And then onboarding and ongoing PD. So when we bring somebody new in, how are we orienting them to our process? And then how are we supporting people ongoing with this work? And then standards, students that are not at mastery. So let's say that you do have the student that only answered 1 and it wasn't enough to be a 1, and they're at a 0, what are we doing? Because for us, that means you failed, right? You failed the course. So you have to somehow make that up. And what we've done in the past is if you've failed a percentage of the course, so let's say that you have 10 standards and you failed 4 of them, then typically that's when we assign you to summer school, or you have to come in and make those 4 standards up. You have to show us that you have competence to do those standards. If they failed more than that, typically you get reassigned to the class. Now, I know that the SRG team, I don't know if they've met and actually talked about what those thresholds are yet. I'm looking at the SRG team members who are here. No, but that's on their list to work through. So we do have options already in place that we do even with traditional grading for students who are not at mastery, but it's just a matter, we have kind of an at-risk room right now where they can be assigned during a study hall to make those up or to show evidence. And then we also have the option of summer school during the summer where they can earn credits there as well.
And did we hear right? You fail one standard, you fail the class?
Correct.
Wow.
But you only recover the one standard.
But you only recover the one
I know,
standard.
that's like failing one test and you fail your entire class. That's mind-blowing.
Yep. So you have to, but a lot of times, and you know this, if you have a unit of study, it might be 5 weeks. So you might be out of study hall for 3 or 4 weeks while you're recovering that section of the class, and then you've got your credit.
So quick question on that topic. That's what I can't, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around. So presumably, as a parent, I like to monitor my kids' grades, and I'm assuming if they're turning in homework, then they're learning the necessary skills they need to pass that test.
Correct.
Right? It is, I will say, certain classes he has, I get somewhat regular feedback on Infinite Campus. Like it pops up and says, Hunter's missing an assignment. And then I'm immediately like, Hunter, where's this? And Mr. Baldwin, where's this? Whatever it may be. But that's not the case for all. So, some don't have, it appears, maybe I'm wrong, won't have any homework or they just are doing something and go right to an assessment. How does and maybe that's not the case. Maybe they're supposed to have.
That shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my question is, how do you prevent it from getting to that point, right? To where you fail one test. How do you make sure and get earlier up? And I'll say, I'll tell you, I am trying to read Infinite Campus, and I'm really putting a lot into it to understand it. It's hard when you see these 300 different standards, and I asked a question today, and the teacher was fantastic in her response, but I would have had no way of knowing that the standards that I was looking at aren't going to be taught till the next semester, right? They're all like,
Yeah.
just blah right on that
Yeah.
page, so it's
Yeah.
really hard. Like, I'm putting a lot of energy, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to read this, but it's like hieroglyphics right now, just trying to interpret what my kid is doing and where he's going. So, and that leads into, how can a parent do their half of that, three-legged stool that I talked about, if we don't have the data in such a way that we can interpret it? So,
Right. Yeah, because I think
or it's
that's.
not coming in timely, that's the other thing. It's
Right. And those are things that are on our list here, because it is, we have mentioned that every student should have opportunities for practice before they are assessed.
Yeah.
And that's obviously at the discretion of a teacher. I currently teach, I have a student that has a 0. Just hasn't done any of the body of evidence and hasn't done the standards, so.
And has the parent supposedly, if they're watching Infinite Campus, got regular updates from you? Hey, they
Yeah, it's in there, yeah, it's in there that it's a 0, and
But, I mean-
and it's a little different, in fairness, it's a little different for my class, because I'll talk to the student, I mean, this is a college level class,
Yeah.
right? And so I'll talk to the student and I'll say, this is what's gonna happen, and they're obviously a little bit more mature, but I think that's the conversation that Adam and Sharon and Danielle had with their teachers is, if we're using SRG as a process to give feedback, then we have to give feedback, and we have to have the evidence in there to give feedback on. And so I know we've done spot checks where we pull up a teacher's grade book and say, okay, let's see, are there body of evidence for standards, and we'll just randomly pick. And I think without exception, there have been. And so, we maybe haven't spot checked the one that isn't there, or maybe there's more than one, but that's how we're kind of going through that process. And I think that.
Body of evidence is homework. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm still getting
Yeah.
aligned with your taxonomy.
Yeah, body of
Well,
evidence is homework, because it's not always homework, right?
Yeah.
They do it in class, it's in
Something
classwork.
the teacher grades on.
Yeah, yeah.
So every teacher should have that. They should have several of them leading up to an assessment that's kind of somewhat spread out over the course of in-between assessments. And parents should be getting regular updates. Like I said, there's some where I get, hey,
Yeah.
missing assignment, he was out sick or whatever
Right.
but that day I'll only get it on 1 or 2 classes. I don't get it on all of his classes that he had a missing assignment. And I was like, well, he was out the whole day. Wouldn't I have?
It depends on if they had an
Oh, if they
assignment
had
that day.
anything that day,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
um,
it would depend.
Okay.
Is this recovery, am I looking at this right, you're using Edgenuity to have them recover the standards?
Yeah, I think our math might use Delta Math, so it depends on the content
So
area.
instead of being with the teacher, they're going to the online version?
Yep, unless they fail, then they get put in the class again. And that's what our current practice is. That's not anything different than what we do now.
I've got some more, but I want to pause. Dan, do you have anything?
No, I'm still reading.
Okay. Well, I guess so first off, I appreciate the actions that you guys are putting in place on this and looking at it. One of the things I want to make sure, and I don't know how to say this without, I guess going out saying it, I want to make sure whatever solution statements we come up with, the problem statement, isn't overly burdening our teachers, right? Like, is there a way we can solve certain things by implementing them a different way? And I don't know, I'll just give you an example. If a teacher gives an assessment, and I think I'm using your terms correctly, and only 30% of the class fills that assessment, whose responsibility is to go back and hound all those other kids to get them to do that assessment, right? And here's where my head's at. In elementary, and correct me if I'm wrong on this is where my head's at. Elementary, you got 24 kids. That teacher's got 24 kids, 25, something like that to worry about. If you're a high school teacher, you got 125 kids that you're dealing with. That's a whole different ballgame, when you're dealing with kids not turning in, and we want to push these kids. But if we don't have consequences yet for them not turning it in, so teachers having to go do that, is there other ways that we can say, hey, you give an assessment, whoever, whatever kids didn't do it, it's on some other process to go track them down. And again, I'm just throwing stuff out for you guys to think about, just to make sure we not put more burden on the teachers themselves.
Can I just here's my quick thoughts. I think you think, old school elementary would be like that, right? But in 2 and up, so as low as 2nd grade, we have departmentalization going on. So any given educator, for example, I'll use Dan Kroll, he teaches math to all 4th graders, so he has 60 kids in math. And unless they're in his homeroom, he only gets to see them similar to the format of a secondary building, like the 40 minutes or the 50 minutes that he has math instruction with them, right? So I'd say that the concern you're addressing goes
I did not
to
know that.
2nd grade.
But that just changed this year though, wasn't it, for
There's
the
been
lower grades?
departmentalization through 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Prior to this year, it's at 2nd grade level
Yeah.
now. So the problem you're getting at is there. But I will also speak my piece on this, because this is something I really kind of have a hard time with, okay? I was a 7th grade teacher at a different district, and I had 120 kids every day, right? And I kind of had a comment, and it's maybe not fair to me to make, but my comment was, I don't understand that, and here's why. I as a 7th grade teacher, had routine assignments from the first day of school, and my subject's probably easier, right? To know every Friday I'm going to assign the same vocabulary chart with these new words, and every Monday it's due. Right? And I was really stringent on, if that's the thing that if I need my kids to develop vocabulary, then that's the thing I'm gonna push. And when I don't get my vocabulary chart on Monday, I walked every one of those kids to the office. Whoever didn't turn it in, we called home. They stayed after school that day. We fixed it, and they went home, and they didn't do it again. Like, it wasn't a problem,
Yeah, and that's a good
right?
example of where I think it's passing off, to the administration. The teachers
Right.
don't have to go hunt, they're just giving the list to Beckel saying, hey, these kids didn't do their homework,
Well, I think there's a difference, because, so the example, and this is where I think we have to be careful, because we're talking about a body of evidence or homework, like in-class assignment, or we're talking about assessments. If we have 30% or we have 70% of our kids not doing an assessment, that is definitely a teacher problem, right? Like, that's the test. That's to see if they know
Not
what the...
turning it in is
Yeah.
a teacher problem?
Yeah, because I mean...
70%.
Yeah,
Okay,
if we
yeah,
have 70% of kids not turning in a test, then that's a teacher problem. Typically, we'll have 1 or 2. I think the challenge is that we're talking about in-class work, or what we typically have called homework before.
Yeah, the body of evidence.
The body of evidence, yes. And that's a different animal, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if they're supposed to be doing it in the class, then again, that is a teacher issue, because that's what the time is meant for. So if they're letting kids on their phone, or, any number of things, that could be a classroom management problem, that could be a reward system. We have to dig into it.
You're supposed to give time in the class, and you're supposed to
We
complete
do
it
give time in the class, and
You're supposed to
a lot of
complete it.
times they complete it in the class, yes, because we don't see homework the
Yeah.
same way. Like, we don't get to give assignments and have kids bring it back the next day typically, because kids are extremely busy.
Yeah.
So typically, and I'll just speak for myself, when I give an opportunity for practice, it's in class, because I want them to be able to ask me questions. I want to be able to have conversations with them with what they don't understand, and I think that's how most of our teachers do it. There might be occasionally where you didn't get finished and you're in a practice at home, but I think typically we think of it as practice in class, so that we understand where they are. I can walk around, or I can have them come up and talk to me, and it gives me an idea of what else I need to work on, with whom. And so there might be kids that I look and I'll say, Dan's got it, he don't need to turn it in. I just talked to him, I know he knows what it is, right? So he might not do the homework or body of evidence, and if he's doing fine, I might not have a conversation with him about it. But if Ted, oh boy, right? Ted and I need to have a conversation, because Ted needs to do that practice. And so I might sit with him one-on-one and do that practice with him, so that he gets that confidence to do it. But every kid's different. And so I think the practice, though, is what we're seeing is kids are coming in and saying, I don't have to do this, right? There's no consequence if I don't do this. Again, how do we put that back on the student? Right, and you don't know it.
And you fail the standard, you
Right.
fail the entire course.
Right, right. So that puts a little onus back on the student, because, you know what, this first time, and I guarantee you,
But a parent's
they're
gonna
gonna
be
come
like,
in.
how did I know he wasn't doing the body of evidence?
Well, because we're giving that feedback.
That's.
You know, and
I
that's,
think
and so I think if we can show parents how to read that report a little easier, that might help with that. But I think every teacher, I mean, if I were concerned about this student not knowing how to do it, I would probably be talking to his parents tomorrow.
Okay.
I know he knows how to do it, he just hasn't turned it in yet. I'm not giving him a free pass, right? And so I think every teacher has that same mentality. If a kid is struggling and really is not at where they need to be with a standard, they're at a 0, they're in communication with the parent. That's how we've set it up. I think, have you guys had any contrary things to that? I'm not in your
No.
shoes, so I don't know what your conversations are.
The only thing I would add to that, just to get to what she just alluded to, is when I first got here and I was working with SRG, they were talking about this 0, and I was like, what? Like, what? Like, what do you need that for? Like, it took me off guard, and as I asked further questions, I was like, their answer was, we literally have kids that come into rooms and they do nothing and put nothing on the paper. And that was just shell shock to me. Like, what? Like, I've never heard of that, right? And so I think over time, and I don't know how we got here or what have you, but I think it's a cultural shift that occurred at some point. I don't remember not turning in my homework. I think that was a really big deal when I went here. But at some point, there was a shift where kids do not have the mentality, and it was before full implementation of SRG, because I remember having these conversations in August and September last year, like, what do you mean they don't turn it in? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I think it's a student cultural shift that sometime was made, and we've got to figure out how to bring that back around.
Yeah.
And I would not attribute it to SRG this year, because those conversations were had.
So you had a large amount of kids before that weren't doing homework?
Yes.
Large.
Yes.
Yes, very much so.
Interesting.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we moved to that. If you have a 0 in any of them, if it's just because you're not doing it, you don't get away with that, right? So it's actually
So it's
holding
just you're
them
not
more
doing
accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you could do minimum.
No, he just said though.
No,
earlier
as a
that
teacher, you can decide
say,
that.
hey, I'm gonna give you a 0, you only did 2 out of 13, that you're still getting a 0, because I know the behavior plan. He said apparently they have that ability to.
Correct.
Now, here's the deal.
Sure, it's
Making
allowed.
sure that the teacher should do that, because again, I go back to this statement right here, that we are producing successful citizens in an ever-changing society. And part of our mission statement is not just to educate the kids, it's producing successful citizens at no consequences of actions. So that's where,
So when you think about our test retake policy too,
yep,
that the kid, most teachers will require the student to do some bodies of evidence before they can retake. That way they demonstrate some understanding to retake it.
yeah. So question,
Yeah.
and proposal, just for you, something to think about, why don't we modify the handbook to say there has to be X amount of body of evidence submitted before you can have a test retake,
That
right?
is one of the notes I have to update.
So,
Yeah.
and I think, I don't know, for me, that begins to codify some of the things, you know, that I'm concerned about on some of the stuff.
Right.
And then it's, okay, this is policy and there has consequences if those things, you know, aren't happening. And
Right.
So anyways,
Absolutely.
There's a lot of bigger things. I mean, we still don't even know how to convert to a GPA or all this stuff yet. It's just
Yeah, we have
mind-blowing that
like
we have this implemented. We have huge things that we still need to deal with, and we have kids that are
But we do have
suffering
it
because of
converting
it.
to a GPA. I mean, to say that it's not is not a true statement. We do have it converting to a GPA. And I think the assumption, and it was talked about at the last meeting, you know, like, we don't have to invent this. So we didn't invent this. We looked at schools that have been doing this and who have had success with this and talked to them about how do you create a GPA as a result of this. So when I was asked last year as a pilot for this, you know, so kids can't get a B. I had 7 or 8 Bs in my class because of the way it converts to a GPA. And I think that when Ms. Good was talking about, you have a vertical conversation about grades, but you also have a horizontal. So when you're looking at a standard, that's one piece of the horizontal, and you have 8 vertical, or 10 vertical, or in some cases 14 vertical in every class. So you might have a 3 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a, you know, on whatever the standards are, which is what you would expect. Not every kid's great at everything. And so that all then computes into a grade. If I were to pull my grade book up right now, you'd see I'd have an F, I'd have probably 2 Ds, I'd have probably 8 Cs, I'd probably have 7 or 8 Bs, and I'd probably have 4 As. So what parents are gonna see on the report card is the letter grade, and it's gonna convert in the process that we've made as a result of the feedback we've gotten from other people who have done this. And so, and I think I mentioned this, when I look at my scores, if I were thinking traditionally about how to grade them, because I've been doing this a lot of years, they almost all line up, right? I might have a few more kids in that B range because they really worked their tails off and they knew which standard they were working on, but I might have a few more kids in the D range because they just weren't doing any work, right? And so that, I think it's a little bit more authentic now than what it was, because now they know exactly why they have the grade they got, because of this standard, this standard, this standard. And so we do have a conversion to the GPA.
And where is it? I have yet to see that. I have
That's in the grading
scale, that's a
practices.
huge
We can,
gap.
I asked for it to be printed off. Here. Make it
I knew.
Thank you.
I
know. So that's in the handbook on the conversion to GPA? or
Correct.
where is it? Okay.
So think about traditional grading too, it's not the percent that turns into a GPA, the letter grade turns into a GPA. Right, like if a kid gets an 82%, that doesn't make a GPA, it's the B that makes the GPA.
Yeah, I know, but where are we getting these Bs, B minus? I'm not seeing a scale, because the
So-
scale on like the 0 to 1 or the 1 to 2 is quite.
The same as it was before. It has not
Anyway,
changed.
but the scale is so large that it's hard to see, like, where, how are they falling anywhere from the D to the B? Like, how are we, I haven't seen a scale that actually shows that. Because like they said, you know, the F range was so big, from 0 to 50%. Well, yeah, but it's the range for the letter grades on the scale that we have now from like a 1 to a 2 is large. So where, if you're getting a 2, you're getting a 1, and my kid went from an A, got a 2 and a 3 on something, dropped down to a B minus. My kid is someone who needs a scholarship. Her mom's not alive, her dad's getting his life back together, she doesn't have the money. I'm gonna pay for it as best I can, she needs scholarships. This is screwing her GPA, this is screwing her chances to get that stuff. And it's hard for me to sit back and watch this affect her like that. I mean, she's never been so stressed about grades as she has this year, and she's not the only one. And that is why I'm so boisterous about this, because I see it at home, and I can't fix it. I'm a teacher, I'm looking at this, like, I don't even know what you're doing right now, and she can't tell me half the time.
And I've heard that from more than just one parent to understand how that works. Is it possible to, I don't know, set up some time to walk? I know we can't meet outside more than 2 of us at a time, but like, you know, a couple of us, just to sit down with the 2 of you to walk that through and really
Anytime.
challenge it and break it down so we can understand that. Because I do need to understand it.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay. Because we have to figure out resolution on that. If somebody just misses one test and it goes from an A down to a B minus, one assessment, that doesn't seem right. Okay. Did you have any questions on this?
Nope.
Okay. I see our sheriff over here probably waiting for their time to come up, so.
Yeah.
You ready for Chad?
Well, hold on, I don't know if you had any more on your list?
No, let
And
me
then we
just
have to
double check,
approve some
because,
stuff, And then he's up after that.
yeah, no, I'm good, and like I said,
I did see you got a whole ADM, and it looks like possibly Van Meter. I seen a short summary of what they said, like.
yeah, and we'll
Any other
expand on
takes
that.
on that?
Yeah.
Okay, you'll
Yeah.
expand on that?
Yeah, if I put this on as an action item, then we can go through them and highlight different things throughout the process, or do you want me to do it now?
What is this over, the SRG?
Yeah, some of the SRG, one of
They
the,
got a whole ADM.
ADM and Van Meter.
Mesh.
they don't, we had asked if they had any, for the accountability piece,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and trying to figure out how do they grade that, how do they do that with kids turning in homework, and they've got a culture where the kids turn in homework, right? We have to figure out how to get to that culture. And so, they don't have a grade for it, they just talk about it in their classes. The teachers just talk, this is why it's important, this is what you have to do, this is the expectation, and then they'll work with them. They'll have them after school, they'll have them before school, and that's just the expectation. And so for us, communicating that with parents, if I have a kid that I want after school and a parent calls me and says, well, my kid can't stay, we have to have the support to say, no, this is the expectation, this is, this is the direction the board wants us to go, we need to be able to have your student after school. So but that's not the case with every parent. So we need to have direction around that. If we're going to make this more accountable, which I am completely in favor of, then we're going to have some support behind that, because that's not been the way it's been here for
I'm
a
just
little
saying
while.
more accountable for sports and extracurricular activities. That's the biggest thing. Like, I know that's what made me turn my homework in
Right.
high school, is I couldn't wrestle if I didn't do it.
What if you don't play sports?
I was going to say, we've
Well,
got to
that's
have
fair.
accountability for every kid.
Yeah, how do you do it on the others? I agree.
The last 3 years, that would not be true, though. If you look through if we went back to the normal, how many Ds did you have, Fs, the every 4-week grading stuff,
Yeah.
your student athletes are not the ones. You can
They're
find
not
one or
the
two
ones,
over,
okay.
but those are not, that was not the reason that they were getting their work in or not. So I'll be honest.
Okay,
At least
that's
it's not-
a good metric to know.
We can dive
You're
into
right.
it later, but
There's-
yeah,
The
what if you're not
sports isn't the
sports?
only one.
I mean,
I agree.
Yep. And our job is all of them,
Yeah,
even those who don't do
Absolutely,
sports, so.
yes. But yeah, whatever ADM's doing is obviously working.
Yeah, but we have to know that we're not them. So we have to take the best that we
Yeah.
can that fits here, and we have to make what it is here.
Okay.
Make it I-35, so. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Next, we have discuss and approve consent items. The past meeting minutes, you all received a copy of that. Monthly bills and financials, those are sitting in front of you. And then resignations and contracts. Denny Magers hired as high school ag teacher. Misty Smith hired as bus driver. Joel Jacobs resigns as bus driver. Nicole Blackford hired as an associate. And then D, open enrollment, which I didn't see.
We did not have any open
paperwork for that.
enrollment this year,
Okay.
or this month.
Is there any discussion on those items? Mr. Mager's coming back temporarily, full-time?
He'll be here full-time, at least for this semester. I thought I saw him
I
walk
saw him.
in.
I've seen
I see him back there.
Okay.
Yeah, we're actively looking for somebody to take on that role, so if we get somebody hired for next year, then obviously that changes, but
He's doing us a
We're
favor.
definitely
Yes, he
grateful
is.
for that.
Yes.
Doing us a
Goodness.
favor.
All right, no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent items.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items.
I'll second the motion.
It's been properly moved and seconded, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Monica, are you there yet? Fell asleep.
No, she isn't.
Yes, I'm here. I didn't get off mute in time,
Yeah.
yes.
Aye, okay,
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
thank you. All right, next we have items for discussion. We have the school resource officer update.
All right, got some stats for you guys here.
Thank you.
Kind of what I've been doing.
Thank you.
Sir?
Scoot around here.
thanks, Chad.
All right, so as you can see, I do a lot of different things here, and every day has been, and I can imagine will be different. This is just the activity amounts. I'll go through each one since school started and through Friday, last Friday. I've been in 28 classrooms. That's varied from introduction to talking to fielding every kid's question that they can send out in 40 minutes. Assemblies, that's been, half of them were just assisting with like grandparents' day with parking and directions and stuff like that. The other half were for, the kids went to the Iowa Wild game. I actually played hockey in high school, so Miss Whitson and Miss Bloom sent out an email, just kind of a generic hockey PowerPoint that they were going to show. I'm like, no, I'll handle this one. I can handle this one, so it's good. Counselor meetings, that's been meetings with counselors, and that's been more about possible child endangerment, abuse things, and just discuss the next steps from there, if what we can do. Administrator meetings, it's been meetings mostly with them about student issues, parent issues, building issues, security issues, all kinds of different things there. Parent meetings, that's been about bullying issues, and mostly I've talked to Mr. Beckel with those. We've gone through them together because they're on the high school end. Meetings with outside law enforcement, that's just been with other counties and state patrol about driving issues, essentially. Emergency drills, fire, storm, lockdown stuff with the whole school. Harassment issues, that's on the juvenile side, that's been four of them. Haven't heard about any of those for a while, so I'm hoping they're solved. And harassment issues on the adult end, that's been, some of them were outside of the building, former students, they're in touch with the counselor, they refer to me, so talk to them. Others have been doorbell ditching issues, students to teachers that wouldn't stop. Juvenile referrals, as you can see, that's actually at 0, which I find surprising, and, well, good, but as we all know, that's not going to stay at 0. The tobacco citations, that's at 1, and that actually didn't occur here. That was a mom who caught son who was absolutely fed up with it, drug him here, and Mr. Beckel dealt with it.
Good job, man.
But you did some work.
Driving citations, that's at 1, and that actually has nothing to do with anybody here. School bus arm violations, it's 3 of them. 1 was Madison County, 2 were Warren County. The part that sticks out with those was that all 3 were actually students here. So something to talk with whoever knows the drivers out here. Is it
That's
Street
outside
smart.
agency.
smart?
Yeah, street
Like everywhere else.
Yeah.
And other bus issues, vandalism, bullying, poor driving outside and inside the bus. Vehicle assist, high school kids drive high school kid cars, also forget their lights on.
They've
That's
been
varied
running all
from,
day.
They've been running all day.
it's varied from leaving lights on. When it was still really hot at the beginning of the year, one kid, he had him and his 3 little sisters in the car. I followed them home. Just didn't need to get stuck at 1 p.m. when it was close to 100 out, so. Vehicle accidents, that's surprisingly low in my opinion at 2, and they actually originated on the road, finished in the parking lot. We haven't had a slip parking lot yet, so I assume that number will go up too. Outside investigations, those are, we're not getting too in-depth with the camera there, but they have nothing to do with here, but used resources here and talked to an instructor who kind of got me on the track of a crime that is outside here.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Training days, I've had 5.5 of those. 5 of those was National Association of School Resource Officers. You can only do that once, so. Training days presented by my department, those were the trainings presented by Dawn on teacher and service days about lockdown such. That was 2 of those, and salvage vehicle inspections. I'm the county's guy that does the totaled vehicles. People fix them, they bring them to me. I did 13 of those while at the school. They have nothing to do with the school other than these people come to me. I've been doing them for 8 years. These are all people I know and trust to be here for that. It takes 10, 15 minutes. They fix it. They show me what they fixed. They get out. It's hold on the parking lot of my car. Time at the school, 519 hours and 39 minutes, and that's through Friday. That's what I got. Questions?
Does the Madison County Sheriff's Department get paid for your salvage vehicle inspections?
Yes.
I want credit.
Yeah, state gets it too. State gets a copy.
Like $15?
Something like that.
I thought you'd like that, Jason.
It's more of a courtesy to the citizens or something.
Yeah,
is what
it's kind of, it's more of a wash than anything.
Yeah.
With the tobacco, does that include
like
drugs, like,
With the
like the vaping, the marijuana, any of that kind of stuff? Does that include with the tobacco, or have there been issues with that?
Haven't had any
No?
issues, found issues with it yet. I'm sure it exists, but as far as I know, they're either hiding it a lot better or not doing it here. I mean, we check the bathrooms, we listen to complaints, we have the vector thing set up
I
now.
was gonna say, do you have the vape thing in the bathroom?
We don't have the detectors now.
Okay, we just got those this year, that's why I was,
Are they
We have
just
school
going
email
off
too,
weekend?
but there's.
yeah, we've gotten hits, yeah, multiple hits, yay.
I did have one question. So the previous board had a closed door session, I think, at the Alice training where they walked through, more detailed stuff.
The safety plan.
Yeah, the safety plan. Is it possible for this new
You
board
bet.
that we could set up a session to have this board
Yeah,
walk through that safety
you bet.
plan? Awesome.
Yeah, I think the other thing that Chad probably doesn't give himself enough credit for is that he does a really nice job of building relationships with kids, so eating lunch with them and, seeing them in the hall and asking them how things are going. And when you see these numbers on here, I mean, when I see parent meetings at 4, I think, well, gosh, that doesn't take long. You have to find out the background, you have to talk to the kid, you have to meet with the parent, right? It's just like one of the administrators, when we talk about, oh, there's a fight, that probably took an hour of your day. No, a lot of times it takes 6, 7, 8 hours. So sometimes I think numbers are a little deceiving, but I will say, one of the other things that I think Chad does a nice job of is he does an excellent job of just security checks on the building. He does a lot of camera monitoring where he's looking to see, and we had a drill today, if you want to call it that. So we're training up our staff on our command center and how to run the cameras. So if we had somebody in the building that was a threat, could they follow them, getting from one camera to the next to the next? So Chad was our threat. I heard he was crawling at one point during the episodes today.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, that's what,
Maybe they're
that's what I heard.
Give them a break.
Yeah, but all of that stuff takes, that was probably a good hour and a half, 2 hours of the day. And I think the thing that for us here, we knew that there weren't going to be a ton of things, hopefully, on this list, right? Like, we've got a ton of good kids who don't always make great choices, but overall, it's a really positive place. But I think the intangible things that are not monitored here are what he does well too. And those are things that I think reassure our families, reassure our teachers, kind of help us just have a safe environment day in and day out. So maybe we don't have as many vapors because Chad is in the building, right? I'm going to get a ticket right away. I'm not going to get a sheriff down here and have to walk through it all. It's somebody I know, it's somebody that I've gotten a relationship with. So I think that that's always important in this conversation too, and really that can't be measured. But I do think it's worth noting.
I will double click on that. Having the ability for these, students to develop a relationship with law enforcement that's positive in this environment pays dividends, I think, for you and your profession later on down the road as well as they get older. So thank you for the time you spent eating lunch with them and talking with them and just getting to know them.
They're always interesting, they always got something different to say going on.
Have you guys done the active shooter drill with the kids? Have you ever done one of those with the kids?
No, we only talk about it with the kids.
Okay.
I think the safety team's thought was we don't want to traumatize them, so we just walk through the steps. And I think when we did the Alice training with Chad and with Don over the last couple of months, it was how can you talk to them without making it, a very scary situation, but how do you defend yourself? What do you have is you got your resource as a tool. Where are you going to go?
With the older kids, you might want to consider, that was a big feedback, and we actually did our first one last year, and we had huge feedback from the kids. They're like, man, it made us really think, like, what door are we going to go out of? What are we going to do, right? We made sure it wasn't too scary. We knew what time it was. We sent out to the parents. We did.
Right.
But lots of feedback. Actually, they were like, can't they shoot blanks or something? We're like, calm down. But they really appreciate the fact that, because they did do some things and made them like, okay, we hear a sound over here. Do we go out to the store? Then you had to figure out the layout of the school.
Yeah.
Not a drill that anyone wants to have to do, but you have to be realistic in today's age.
Right.
And just something to consider, because Our kids really, now we didn't do it with the littles because that would be really
When
traumatic
it
for
comes
the
to the little
tiniest.
ones, it's going to be more up to the adult in charge of it.
Yes.
Yes.
So we just did it at the high school level and it went very well.
I think two things you got to account for, at least in this district, is one, some of the kids in this district, if there's an active shooter, they're going to be picking up chairs and running and wanting to, get into the fight and knowing that, hey, they probably shouldn't do that. I think the other thing is, and Sheriff Barnes and I talked about this one time, being in this district, you're going to have parents that are going to come rolling up in here wanting to protect their kids, armed and understanding staff how to deal with that and how to deal with, that situation, because you're not going to know. Like, that'd be scary for you. Yeah. So, anyway. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jason, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. If you guys need anything, I'll give that credit for you. Thank you. I know people.
Right, it's air conditioning fund at I-35. That's what we give you credit.
How many say that 13 times 15? We're going to get much.
All right. Next up, we have the Iowa Performance Profile and a comparison sheet for overall performance. I thought this was on last.
I introduced it last time because I wanted you to see it. I was going to follow up and see if you had any questions. The administrators are purposely putting some of these things in their reports so that it's not all at once.
Yeah.
But we do have comparison sheets for our conference as well that I'll probably share next time. I'm just checking to see if you've had time, if you have questions about that, because I don't want you to get too deep into it if you don't understand it.
I'll be honest, I've looked at it. My question's more centered around, there's 100 different assessments out there that talk about our school and our ranking. And this conversation for another time, understanding what this report says versus another report that shows us it's different. So, and that's on me to bring the different reports to you and ask those questions.
Sure. So we'll continue, if you guys are okay with it, we'll continue to put it on the administrative reports, like Adam had his section today about the performance profile. I think Danielle has a section ready to go about some of the scoring for testing and why we have focus on math. So we'll just have them continue to put it in there if you don't have a problem with that. And then if you have specific questions, we can address those anytime.
Concerns here?
No, that works.
Okay.
All right. Next, we have discuss and approve superintendent's recommendation on annual designations. You guys remember these were items that we had tabled from our annual board meeting, and we're bringing it back this time around for changes to the legal counsel, or no, keeping with the legal counsel because we know we have to do that, and then the changes to the reconsideration committee, which is Heather Gelsma, Abby Meese, Brayton Weber, Joe McDonald, Remington Hutton, Tanya Donahue, and Emily Hanna. Are there any discussions around those items? All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve
I'll motion to approve.
the consent.
The consent items.
Well, the superintendent's recommendation.
Oh.
Oh, we have both of those on
Thank you.
yes.
So you'll have to say that.
Sorry. The legal counsel and reconsideration?
No, just say, I motion to approve the superintendent's,
C.
C, yes.
So one down. I motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation on the annual designations.
A motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. Next, we have the board policy review. This is our third reading of the policies that are associated with the disciplinary policy updates, as well as the items, if you remember, were associated with Senate File 496 in general. This is our third reading. We did make an update to the, what one was that? 605-3R1 last time around to change the makeup of the reconsideration committee. Otherwise, everything else is the same. Is there any discussion?
This will be the final reading.
This is the final reading.
Yep, so it'll go into effect if you all vote in favor.
It has to be unanimous.
No?
Majority.
All right, there's no discussion.
She said if we all voted yes, I want to make sure.
If there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the board policy review, third reading.
I will second.
Been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed?
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. All right, next item we have is the early retirement for our certified staff. I think this was talked by us at the last meeting and then the previous board as well, so it's been talked about a couple times. We talked about a $50,000 HRA payment associated with this at the last meeting. Looks like that has been updated appropriately, so here we're just here to discuss and I guess action and approve so we can get those offered out. Correct?
Correct.
All right. Any discussion on that?
I thought we discussed it a lot last time.
Me too.
I motion we approve it.
I second.
I'll second the motion.
Give it to Monica.
Dan and Monica.
It's a weird motion that put me. All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. Now we have a discussion item on the retirement packages for support staff. You guys remember at our last meeting when we were talking about the retirement package for certified staff, we all were like, well, we've always talked about certified staff, why aren't we, potentially considering the non-certified staff as far as retirement packages? So we had asked Dr. Dentlinger to go get some information on what that would, potentially look like. And she brought it back to this board meeting for us to kind of, look at and have conversations around.
What that means then is she went and asked Dan to get in touch with all the people she knows that does this in the schools.
So this is the same material that I gathered whenever we discussed this at the Labor Management Committee, what, a year and a half,
Can
2
we have
years
her come
ago?
up with
Yeah,
some
you want to come up
discussion?
here,
Yeah,
just
be
because
part
you
of
were
this
here.
since you were engaged and.
Yeah.
So she came and asked me if, she said, remember when we discussed this at Labor Management? She said, do you still have that materials? And I said, yes, I'd have to find it though, because she knows what my desk is like. Not a file.
What I was saying is you don't have to stand, you can sit with us as we discuss, we might have questions, so.
So anyway, I found the materials that we had discussed at the Labor Management Committee. And I reached back out to the schools that we had had the information from before to see if they had any updates and things like that. And then I just put together kind of a overview of that and give it to Mrs. Denley.
Okay.
Yeah, so the gamut is large, right? There's a lot of different options that schools went with. Some of them picked 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and did a percentage of pay. Some did just a sick leave payout, which, if we only did that's a little frowned upon by legal counsel, because then you're punishing somebody who's sick and had to use the days, and so we didn't want that to be the case. And so we tried to blend kind of what we had done here in the past and maybe make it a little bit more realistic to modern. And so we thought if a support staff person had been here for 15 years, full-time service, they would get a $300 retirement incentive.
$3,000.
I'm sorry, $3,000, thank you. Wow, that's a great incentive, $3,000. And then $25 per day for any unused sick leave. And the most that a teacher can bank, a support staff can bank is 115 days. So the most they could get in sick leave would be $28.75. So if you've been here for 15 years and you had most of your sick days, you would get about between $5,000 and $5,800 probably. If you've been here 20 years, the proposal is $4,000, and then if you've been here 25 or more years, the proposal is $5,000, and then obviously the sick days along with that. This is for information only. We have a little bit more time with our support staff with this, and because we're just introducing this, we first of all wanted to get an idea if the board's receptive to this, but then we also need to get feedback from our people who work here. You know, the feedback from, I think Mr. Stroh is exactly right. There's a committee that works on this, but we also have the people who this impacts. So like any decision like this that's going to impact people in pay, we want to make sure we get as much information as possible. So we want to make sure that the board's in favor of us pursuing this. And then if you have other suggestions for what you would like to see in as far as what this would look like, if you could let us know, because Deanne and I have kind of worked on this, we can come up with some more proposals, and then we can get feedback and bring this again for a vote if you want us to continue to look at it.
Yeah, I'd like to hear back from the committee for sure, to get like their input and stuff, but I
Yeah,
think
that
this is
labor
good.
management committee is not just support staff, it's also
Yeah.
teachers, and so it'll be a wide
Yeah,
variety.
that's awesome,
Mhm.
so.
Yep.
Yeah, my biggest thing is when I asked about this in the last board meeting, I want to reward those staff members that have been here a long time and they're ready to, go out and retire, to give them a thank you, send off of some sort, right? So that's why I was asking. So if you can go back and, I guess, talk to them. Obviously, we got to be fiscally responsible, but also
Right.
understand, what would be that good, thank you for your many years of service,
Right.
explanation part on the
Yeah,
end
and
of their career.
Well, and a little history on that, Dr. Craig, who was, I don't know, two superintendents back, he was the one that brought this up, and there isn't a, huge fiscal savings for the district like there is with teaching staff.
Yeah.
So it was being looked at as a retention policy to get people to stay, because
Yep.
we were turning over so many associates and secretaries and whatever. So that's what it was looked at as, was a retention policy and awarding people for
Longevity.
staying,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
So sick days are obviously like paid then? Like normally, like if they are sick, we pay them for being, like while they're gone?
Associate?
They have, yeah, they're allocated so many sick days in a year,
And they're paid for those, right?
If they take them, yeah.
if they need them.
So if they don't take them, how many do they get a year roughly?
Goes up one every year.
Yeah, it goes,
So
starts.
10 your first year, 11 your second year, 12.
Up to 15, they cap out at 15.
I'd be curious to
year.
see the numbers of who we have, support staff, like 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
what that would look like, the payout.
And so dig into this kind of scenario more, are there other options?
Yeah.
When we looked at the plans, I think this one is probably more beneficial than some of the plans we looked at. Like I said, some of them just paid out sick leave. Some of them had convoluted metrics, and
If we would have adopted the one that was in there, Claire and Jennifer would be strangling all of us.
yeah, so we tried to use common sense, but then we also tried to honor people who give their time. One of the things that we've talked about in LMC is that there are people who know they're leaving, and surprisingly, they're sick a whole lot because we weren't paying them out. So it's part, I mean, it's just, yeah.
Because if we're gonna pay someone, like I can tell you, I don't know what exactly everybody makes. I remember reading it at one point in time, but $25 a day for an unused day. I mean, I would take my 200 over my 25 or my 150 over my 25 and use a sick day.
Right. I think we have a lot of staff that are committed to here. I mean, we're talking to people who've been here 20 years, 25 years.
Close to retirement,
Yeah.
sick a lot.
Well, because they weren't given any kind of incentive.
They weren't
They weren't given any kind of,
being here.
So you
But
think the
but
$25 is a good enough incentive?
But at the end of the year,
It's a little low.
say, like, I have over 100
Sick
sick days.
days?
So if I was gonna get $2,500 and I'm getting paid for the day for being here, I would be here.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about other people.
I'm thinking about you doubling up on the money.
well,
Ish, not doubling, but you're getting
But
something.
if I took the sick day, then you're paying me and a sub.
Oh, so it is saving money at that
Yes.
point.
I would say we maybe raise the $25 just a little bit.
We can bring back scenarios and see what that looks like. Yeah.
Just play a money ball here.
$25
Yeah.
increments up to 100.
What'd you just say?
What?
$25.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
Up to 100.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
So,
Well, and
yeah.
I don't think it's on here, but it was 55, right? They had to be 55.
Yeah, you have to be 55 to get early retirement.
I think you're good exploring it, getting the data, running it back through that committee that Frank talked about, and just making
Yeah.
sure things look good. And
So, I mean, are you okay with a 15, 20, 25, and then we can look at options for how much?
I think it's a great start.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll start
It's
there.
a great start, and yeah, go from there.
Okay.
And if the committee has different ideas, like, would
Yeah,
like
we'll bring
to
them.
understand that?
Yeah, we'll bring them.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for your work on this, Deanne.
Yeah, thank you. All right. All right, next we have the at-risk action, and Dan is supposed to read something very specific. I'm joking, I don't know. It has to be Dan, but Dan.
Well, the first one is our plan, so that's attached. So this is the plan that we use to serve our at-risk program, so it identifies services and people.
Oh, okay.
And so that is updated yearly, so you can just kind of look through how we work through that. There are criteria, the state mandates that we use, and so that's all included in here as well. But then it also has the different services, a flow chart for how they would be identified, but then it has risk factors. These are common to every district. And once you are tagged for some reason, so let's say you're homeless, then you would become tagged for that reason. And let's say your grades start to slip, now you're tagged. And so we try and make sure that kids don't fall through the crack of what could possibly lead them to dropping out of school. So that's what this whole plan is designed around. So the first one is to approve our plan for this academic year, and the second one is to approve the funding. So if anybody has questions,
Any
yeah.
changes from the plan from last year?
Sometimes we change what services we used to have an in-house therapist that would come 2 days a week. We've not been able to fill that. So now we sometimes send kids out of building for those services. So it just depends on what resources we have available. That's really the only thing that changes.
Are you able to send those during the day, or is that like an after?
We try and send it close to one of the ends of the day,
Okay.
but we know that sometimes there's more need, and so we work around it, yeah.
How do we handle transportation for that?
Parents.
What if they don't have parents?
I don't know that that's really been an issue.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
kind of, the benefit of, like, the prior to, when we had somebody in, that's not a school employee, it is it's an exterior organization sending their person in, and to us, it's a convenience. Like, our kids don't have to leave, and they can get this service, and we're not sitting in a car for an hour,
Yep.
and those things. So to me, it's a convenience, but unfortunately, that service is so not enough to go around that we can't get an organization to get someone here like they used to do, right? And so it is an exterior thing. It has nothing to do with the school, other than we want to give them a place if they can come here, because that helps our kids.
Right.
And so when it comes to transportation, it is a family thing. It's not our thing.
Unless they don't have, like, the only thing I was worried about is like,
Right.
you might be putting on a foster parent
Yeah,
or
we've
something
been,
else.
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
we've been doing some, we have a couple of people that have reached out to us for telehealth services, so they can actually talk to somebody. We've had kids take advantage of that here, where they'll go into maybe a
I
counselor's
just didn't know if
office.
there was any options or anything that we
Yep,
could,
yep.
like, somehow, if they need it.
I think that Rose Dickinson does a really good job of coordinating with people who maybe need supports outside of school. And I don't ask her, because that's not,
No.
you know, but I think she coordinates if we have that need. But we also tap into telehealth, and, yeah,
I just want to make sure we're getting everybody
Yeah.
everything they need.
yeah.
Any other discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the at-risk plan.
I move to approve the at-risk plan for the 2024-2025 school year as presented.
I'll second it.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries 5-0.
All right.
Oh, yes, this one's
All right, next, we have the at-risk plan modified allowable growth. It does require an action. The allowable growth is supplemental aid for at-risk program, and we have an attached proposal. And then an attached way should the board decide to motion. Very prescriptive way to motion.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
So some background on this, and Mr. Gibson and I have talked about this. Schools get a percentage currently, and not every school gets the same percentage, but we're at 3.7%. And the district has a local match of 25%, and then we obtain 75% of that 3.7. I have encouraged Mr. Gibson that we would like that number to go up to 5%, which is something that we need to advocate for with our legislators. We have added an SRO that we now incorporate in this, which is about $60,000 a year, and so that that extra 1.3% would help us pay for that. And so right now, it's kind of a convoluted thing. The state arbitrarily 1 year just said whatever rate you're at this year is what you're going to be at for the next indefinite future. And so we want to try and get that so that every school is at 5%, because surprisingly we have kids with needs that continue to come and services to continue to increase. And so that would be something I would ask everybody to consider advocating for. But for the purposes of this, the portion that we're asking for is 75% of 3.7, which is $233,058. Our local match is $77,000.
Any discussion? No? Okay. Do they have to read this VIIG? I don't know what that means.
No, they don't have to read that.
So the VIIH, the big long one?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, just read the bottom. I thought you meant they have to read that.
Yeah, this is the top one.
I move to approve.
Okay.
Right. I move to approve the request to the School Budget Review Committee for modified supplemental amount and supplemental aid for the 2024-2025 Dropout Prevention Program in the amount of $233,058 for expenditures necessary to implement the 2024-2025 At-Risk and Dropout Prevention Plan as approved by the I-35 Community School District Board of Education.
I'll second it.
Nailed it.
Thank you.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed?
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. Next, we have the calendar recommendations. This is for information only. This generated a lot of conversation, and I am eager to see where we landed. Rumor has it you're moving us to a 4-day school week.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson.
Everyone hear that?
Sorry, that is not true.
Okay, so.
I'm in.
Okay, I'll bring it to the calendar committee. We had two options that we took to the staff and to our parents. The first one was very similar to what we had done this year and the last couple of years. We took a second option which allowed or created a 2-hour early dismissal once a week, every week. And the reason for that is we had some feedback from our high school teachers that wanted to work in some PLC collaboration time during the day. And the easiest way to do that is when kids aren't here. Anyone who knows a high school schedule knows that we have teachers teaching all day, every day in a high school. So saying we can allocate that time is sometimes tricky. So a lot of schools do a 2-hour early dismissal. Many of them do it on Wednesday. I think our parents are used to Fridays, and we thought if any day you want to take off to be with your kids, it'd probably be a Friday afternoon instead of a Wednesday. But obviously, we knew childcare was a big issue. We do have a daycare now, but I think it's just too much of an ask right now for our community. So when we sent the survey out, we had 75% said they wanted to keep the schedule like it is for a variety of reasons. Some just say, sometimes we like to take 3-day trips, and this allows us to kind of do that. And so they don't have to worry about necessarily childcare every week, but they can plan around one week a month or one Friday a month. So the calendar committee is recommending that we use a version that's very similar to this year. Some of the highlights for that, and I'm just going to pull it up here, include teachers starting on the 15th of August. New teachers would start right before that. School would start on the 23rd. We had a lot of discussion about the 23rd. We had a couple of parents ask, why don't we just start on the 26th? Usually the first day is a lot of routines, a lot of welcome, a lot of drop stuff off, and so if we can get that done before we actually have a week of learning, that's kind of nice. And it's also nice to get them in and get them into the building and used to a routine for a day before they have to come back and do it for a whole week. So we kept the 23rd as the start date, and if you remember, that's the earliest day that we can start in the state of Iowa. So that's kind of dictated by
People were starting school during the Iowa State Fair, and that was making a lot of parents mad, so Iowa said you
Sure.
can't start until after.
Right, well, but I think the challenge is that the 19th is actually after the state fair, but they just picked a date and said it'll never be the, but it'll never be, but it'll never fall on the 23rd, so. So we kept the same teacher in-service days. We did have conversations with elementary teachers. Some of you may have had feedback from elementary teachers who were considering the Fridays after conferences, didn't want to do PD, but we surveyed them, and the majority of them wanted to keep that schedule and then have the compensation day on the 27th, in this case of November, which is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We did move conference days to Tuesday and Thursday to accommodate some of the needs of our elementary teachers, and we did move the week, so it's never going to be on election Tuesday, so we wanted to make sure we stayed off of that, and it actually aligns up with our testing a little bit better by moving it up into October. We did verify with Mr. Weber that if we have events that week, it might impact one coach or two, but not both days. And then the other big thing on this one is currently our teachers are contracted for 192 days. This calendar has 190 days in it. We were trying to dig into when did it go to 192, and nobody can tell me when that happened. But we're recommending that we go to a 190-day contract at the same rate of pay that they're making now. I think the thing to remember about this that's a little different is it used to be students had to be in school for 180 days, and now schools can choose between 180 days or 1,080 hours. And so we use 1,080 hours as our threshold, and right now with our current schedule here, we're at 1,140 hours. So that if we have to have a 2-hour early dismissal because of weather, then we don't have to necessarily make it up. The other thing that's important to note is that the legislatures did give us the leeway, and we haven't really developed it at the administrative level yet, partly because I don't want to bring it up with them, but I will. We can use days virtually if we need to. So if we have a really bad winter and we have 11 or 12 days where we're gone, we can actually teach 5 of those virtually and count them in our calendar. And we have not set a plan for that. So we will talk about that. I'm thinking if I keep putting it off, then we won't have bad weather. So we'll maybe come back in May. But that's the calendar that the team is recommending. We wanted to give it to you this month so that if anybody had feedback, you could get that and then let us know, and we could bring a final version back for approval next month.
So you might already know this stuff, so I didn't know, a lot of the feedback I got when this originally came out was on that 192-day thing. So apparently, correct me if I'm wrong here, 198 or 189 days is required by Iowa law, or there's not? So there's nothing.
There's no requirement.
Okay. Apparently we were at 190 at one point in time, or 189, then it went to 190, and then it went to 192, but the teachers never got an increase in pay. So they were sitting at 189, and then their number of days they had to work, went to 192 without an increase in pay. So I think when the first versions of this came out, what lit up my inbox was it was 190 days of classroom time And then in order to hit the 192, they could come back in the summer, or they could do something. And they're like, why? All the schools around us only do 190. So I appreciate, Dr. Daniel here taking some time and actually bringing this back to 190, which I guess that's what most of the other schools in our area do anyways. So, passing that on. Thank
People
you.
got a hold of you about this?
I had some questions
Yes.
too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel like so, nobody emailed me.
Oh, yeah, I got quite a bit of feedback on it, so,
And then 190 includes the 5 holidays,
Yeah.
right? So, they're not here 190 days, they're getting
Yeah,
paid
yeah,
for 190
agreed.
days, yeah.
I think it was just that perception of
Yep.
how to get to 192. We didn't
Yeah, because when they asked me, I said, I have no idea. So,
Do you always survey like the teachers every year when the calendar updates?
typically, the calendar committee tries to put out 2 years' worth of calendar. This year, because we had made the change to do possibly the early outs, we didn't want to lock into that for 2 years. We wanted to see how it went for a year.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're just proposing 1. But I think the community has overwhelmingly said we want to do kind of what we're doing. It makes Adam's job a little harder to find common time for teachers to have PLC, so that we're not asking them to be here outside the day. But, we typically bring 2. But because we were thinking of that change, which was significant, we only brought 1.
Yeah. Got it.
And she's leaving the door open for 4-day school weeks.
No.
Stop it.
I bring it up.
I don't think that'd be something that we could even remotely talk about right now.
No,
with
I'm
the
not.
amount of
I'm
the
just saying.
implementation that's
Yeah.
going on with everything. There's
Agreed.
no
I'm
way.
just trying to get-
I just don't know that there's enough research out there that says it's good for kids.
Yeah, I'll cover it. She tried taking my kids away from me for another day.
Going for 6
No,
days.
thank you for your work on
So
it.
that's just for information. If you get feedback from anybody, please pass it along. We tell parents to send us, maybe have a lot of feedback on the survey we sent, so we comb through that, but I just like to make sure if it's a significant decision that people have time to communicate with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, that brings us to the end. We have some upcoming dates. The holiday open house, which is this Wednesday, December 20th, from 2:30 to 4:30. Board members are encouraged to come to that. I'm looking forward to it. All right, tentative special board meeting, Monday, January 8th at 6 PM. I know this is in flux because the attorney...
No, January 8th is the one where we're talking bids for the Phase 1
Oh, that's not
project.
the, okay,
Yeah.
got it. Science biology,
Yep.
okay. So that one's, yeah. January 10th, this is the one that's, kind of up in the air, special board meeting, closed session on.
So that one is set, and I know that one
I know
board
Monica
member...
couldn't make it,
Yeah, but I think I can visit with her to catch her
Okay.
up to speed, since she was in the process
The
all last
process,
year, that I
okay.
can catch her up.
Are you okay with that, Monica?
Yes, that's fine by me.
Okay,
Is that for
thank you.
6?
January 10th, yes.
Yep.
6 o'clock?
Yep,
And that'll be a closed session.
yep.
And that's why we can't do it, even if she's available, we can't do it telephonically because it's
Yeah,
closed,
yeah.
so.
All right. Still to schedule fiscal?
Yeah, we need a work session on finances, budget,
Okay.
because we're going to have to approve a budget here in the beginning of the March, April, and that process looks a little different now, so we want to do that sometime in January.
Excited about that.
Okay. January should be a busy month, and then we have our next board meeting scheduled for January 22nd at 6 PM.
And we can do a work session right before the board meeting if you want, like at 5. I mean, it just still saves a night.
Do the fiscal meeting at that point?
Makes a long night.
It does. I mean, we can make sure that the agenda maybe isn't so heavy. Yeah.
And bring food.
I'm okay
Because
with
Danny and
that.
I will need food. Okay.
Quickies.
That brings us to end. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries.
All right.
Man, that was my
Thank you,
chance to
everybody.
be opposed.
That was your one chance.